OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
7:30 Friday morning. Very good morning to you. How are you getting on? Hope all is well. Owen, how are you doing?
Good, Adrian. What's the crack?
Colm, how are you going?
Adrian, Owen, good morning.
What are we talking about was the comment that was just made there. So there's a few bits and pieces to get into it. Needless to say, I did find myself watching the golf last night, I have to say, and it was like a battle of good versus evil. Jeremy might phrase it as the battle for golf soul. Looking at it last night, I don't know how you lads felt about it, but I was in the good versus evil, dark versus light. The Phil Mickelson, I really hope he misses this putt. DJ willing against all the live golf lads, I have to say, which was something that almost caught myself by surprise. You know, whenever McDowell, oh no, hang on a second, he is not good enough to get anywhere near that field. The other players, Rory, JT particularly, are very much warmed to, and John Ram, after his comments during the week, I've suddenly found myself really, I caught myself unawares, and I have to be honest about it, I was really cheering on the anti-live crew.
That's what will happen now, won't it? It's like the for the Attitude Era fans of WWF, it's like the Invasion Era. WWF versus WCW. That's what it's like.
I'm sure.
That's honestly what it's like. I just realised that that's exactly what it's like. Live Tour against PGA Tour. Yeah, I kind of the same as you, and couldn't help but loving Roy McIlroy's choice of polo shirt.
Very nice.
Very, very nice.
Very flash. You'd wear it yourself, I'd say.
Ah, do you know? Funny I could.
I thought you were, when you said it was like a battle for the soul of golf soul, you were talking about Adam Hadwin versus Callum Tarrant as like the greatest.
People he'd never heard of 24 hours ago.
What an absolute blockbuster leaderboard it is that we're facing into this weekend. I'm sure it'll mix it up. Like, do we want to see Dustin Johnson rocking up that leaderboard and contend against Rory over the next couple of days? I think that's the best case scenario, isn't it?
You can't have a battle for good versus evil if evil is just doing really badly, which most of them are at the minute.
Yeah.
It'd be you know, it's scant pleasure, it's brief pleasure. You do want one of them to be up there, and if it's going to be anybody, well, it's not going to be Phil anyway by the looks of things. It should be him. Anybody who isn't fully off with the leaderboard at the US Open: Adam Hadwin of Canada, 400 par leading the way. Callum Tarrant, 31-year-old from Darlington, who's nobody has ever heard of before, ever. He played in the US Open once a few years ago, and that's been about it.
That's his only major appearance before in 2019. Missed the cut, world number 445. His clubs arrived late, just as they did in 2019 US Open, his only other major. But what a start. 300
par alongside Rory McIlroy and others. Matt Fitzpatrick trucking along nicely there, 200 par, and John Ram, our new best mate, 100 par. So that's the way that stacks up. It's a bit of a mad weekend of sport. There's a lot of stuff going on. Not all of it sort of top tier sport. The URC final is going to come and go, I have to say, and I ain't going to be watching it.
No?
What if SKG convinces you otherwise?
6:30 on a Saturday evening is the reason why you're not watching it.
It'll be amongst the reasons, yeah. I mean, obviously, if Leinster were playing, I'd be cutting a path to it.
I thought that's
or
like
any of the
pretty
other Irish provinces. It's just I just can't muster the in any given weekend. I say for most of us, and it's definitely true in my case, you have to sort of be able to pick and choose what you're going to watch. So some stuff that you should be watching is going to get left in the cutting room floor, and that's the case for me. It's not going to be. There's no cheeseboard territory there on. It's. Are you going to watch it?
No, I'm just wondering what your 6:30 on a Saturday evening. Like that's a substantial reason for not watching it. Like that feels weird. I think that's a good kick-off time. No,
you know, I don't feel that well towards second screening. It might be one for second screening that I wouldn't really need to watch it because you'd be watching the US Open at that time.
Okay, fair.
It's the US Open's going to win that battle all day long.
It's the first weekend in many that it's not overwhelming, the sporting schedule, isn't it? It's doable.
Yeah. I think the URC final is it's not like a really good moment, to use that phrase, for the URC. Like, this is the thing that we've been crying out for there to be actual good teams coming in from South Africa who are actually going to challenge Leinster, and we got that last Friday. And is this just a sour Leinster man who can't possibly watch a team who's beaten his beloved Dublin boys?
Why you would say that?
Referenced on our Twitter account during the week.
What was this?
Referring to Leinster as a Dublin team.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there we go.
The Dublin team.
No, if they were playing any of the Irish provinces, I'd probably be watching it. It's, again, you just need that bit of, no more than the previous point, you need that bit of them versus us sort of stuff. It's like two South African teams, who really cares? You're absolutely right to say that it is good, obviously, for the tournament that the South African team is now going to go ahead and win it, and that ultimately creates a bit of, we need to beat them next year about it. But not for this weekend. like when something has to go, it's going to be that. Tailteann Cup, of course, on this weekend, semi-finals. It feels to me we're starting to get a good sense of where the Tailteann Cup is at, I think, because everybody was kind of unsure, and I didn't really put my finger on it properly until I heard Jack Cooney talking to Will during the week and saying that even as a squad they were unsure about how up for it they were going to be, like what was their relationship with this tournament, and we're only going to start to figure that out now as we get to the latter stages of it. But I think it's a good weekend for the non-elitists amongst the GAA, in the sense that, like, at last, and I know, look, there's the big argument about Croke Park, and I get that, and I'm sure there are plenty of reasons that we might hear from Croke Park at some point about as to why games need to be played there in terms of season ticket holders and 10-year ticket holders and all that sort of stuff, but it does feel as if we're starting to get a bit of traction for the second tier teams, the ones that, like the 25 teams plus in any given year who had never had any chance of winning Sam Maguire, the Liam McCarthy. Like, the biggest trick that the GAA ever pulled was having those teams sit in studios like this, say that they still had some hope of winning those tournaments. So I just think it's great. I think that we've looked at the GAA for too many years through the lens of the top 6 or 7 teams, and it's a great breakthrough that is a good starting point. It'll never really, I don't think, have the cut through of Sam Maguire championship, let's say, in the sense that, like, I look at my own group and there'll be some of them going along, I'd say, on Sunday, and more of them who would go if it was a Leinster final or the latter stages of the championship. I don't think the Tailteann Cup is ever going to have that level of breakthrough.
The championship is never going to be the Premier League, and anything that's a second tier competition is never going to have that. So to compare it with the championship and the Sam Maguire race is just I hope people aren't doing that, because that's just totally pointless. What you can get is just amazing games and brilliant excitement, as we've seen in the last round with that penalty shootout and controversy and talking points. And I would say all of a sudden we're starting to get to know these teams a little bit better. Like, the Croke Park thing is interesting. You mentioned it there. It's just been, I'm kind of bored of the Croke Park conversation at this point every week. It's like, why are games being played in Croke Park? Andy Moran was on the show during the week and says it's fantastic for the Tailteann Cup semi-finals to be played there. I accept the fact, though, that maybe for Westmeath it's probably boring at this stage. Croke Park probably is.
I wouldn't say so.
You get a game there every year.
Do you mean that facetiously?
No, not at all. Not boring. Maybe boring is the wrong phrase, but like the whole point of Andy Moran's point during the week was that this is something of a novelty for some of these players to be able to play in Croke Park. It's an opportunity. Westmeath don't need another opportunity to play in Croke Park, so maybe they'll be the ones who will feel that this would be better in a smaller provincial ground. But as I say, I'm sick of having these conversations.
No, exactly. And look, they're also not quite Dublin, right? Like, there is definitely there is a difference between the players' perception of the game and the fans' perception of it. And you're right, let's not talk about that anymore. I do think as well we should tip the cap for sure to John Maughan this weekend as well, like, because I know we had him on a couple of years ago when he took on the Offaly gig. It had been 10 years. I had to remind myself this morning, 10 years since he's been in charge of the Rosses, and he's come back and he's breathed fresh new life into Offaly, fresh new life into his own managerial career, and he's shown with the people that he's brought in around him that it can be done, that you can, we assumed belonged to another era of GAA where there was far less tactics and far less of this professional approach, but let's absolutely doff the cap to John Maughan this morning and the job that he's done. And, like, obviously not that much luck to him this weekend, but whatever happens from here, it's a big progress.
Are you going this Sunday?
I can't go, but I will be watching it because it's on the telly.
I have nieces of mine going to the Sligo match. They're from Sligo. Well, they're raised in Sligo. Yeah. So it's good because, like, this deep into the GAA season, I know everything's earlier this year in the actual calendar, but deep into the GAA calendar season, as Sligo fans to be able to go to Croke Park and watch a meaningful match like to get into a final is brilliant. So doesn't the Tailteann Cup fulfil its purpose for that alone? Well,
and that was one of the points that Jack Cooney made, that the younger fans going to Croke Park is exactly...
They're very excited about it.
It's brilliant for them.
It's their All-Ireland, that's what they see it as. Yeah,
and it's also progression for the team as well. I'm sure from the manager's point of view that they're looking at it from all 4 teams this weekend and saying we're another few games down the track, we know a bit more about our players, a bit more about our teams, and by and large I'm sure whoever goes into the final will have squads that have largely committed to it. And I know Offaly have a couple of injuries this weekend, so not fully stacked, but for the Westmeath Cavan final on, I expect that there'll be a bit of fuss about it.
There will be, yeah. I'm trying to think. We've got Arthur on the quiz a little bit later on. Will we have some sort of like Sligo slander to throw your way for that? I'm just trying to stoke.
Wouldn't be Arthur's style, to be fair. He's not as classless as I am.
Well, that's very true. I'm trying to think of how we stoke up some Tailteann Cup rivalry in this office right now, because that's when the summer will really peak.
Fergus Keogh this comment is the comment of the morning and probably will be until 10. URC finally asks two South African teams about whom I know nothing nor care less, doesn't even merit a vache qui rit, which is the French, of course, for the laughing cow. Lovely little bit of soft cheese for your kids.
Obviously there's a big Irish tint to our conversations around the URC. Should we be more of a URC-centric show rather than an Irish-centric show, and pay our due deference to the South African teams and pay them as much respect? Adrian's shaking his head here in studio.
Well, we get an opportunity to do that in the coming up slot that people will see.
Before that, John O'Leary says, is the semi-final of the Tailteann Cup cheeseboard territory, or is this where Adrian dresses down and prepares to slum it in Croke Park?
Neither, it turns out. He won't support his beloved URC, and he won't support his beloved Westmeath.
I've been to see Westmeath 2 times this year. I'd love to be there on Sunday, but other things dictate I can't be. So no cheeseboard.
Events.
Yeah, events, dear boy. 20 to 8, Friday morning, and you're very welcome along to us, and thanks for all those comments. Do keep them coming into us over the course of the morning. We've Kevin Kilbane, who's going to chat to us. He's going to put a bookend on all the Ireland chat after that recent cluster of games. We'll get Kevin's thoughts on all of that, and we'll get his ranking as well of his Ireland goals from the window just gone. Roisin Upton, Ireland hockey player, World Cup kicks off in a couple of weeks' time. Roisin will be in studio to tell us how prep is going for that, and can they repeat the heroics of 2018? Get Roisin's thoughts on that in just a few moments. Get back into the GAA. Who have we got for quick picks?
Quick picks is Adrian versus Eoin versus Will versus Aisling.
Very good. That is 10 past 8. Sports news at 8:30 this morning here on OTB AM. We'll have the URC with SKG. Stephen Kisbey-Green, resident South African rugby expert, will be in studio to tell us 3 reasons why you need to watch the URC final this weekend, this Saturday evening. Alan Quinlan, we'll get him to pick his what he thinks should be the Ireland starting 15 for the first test against New Zealand upcoming. Live crappy quiz, myself versus Arthur versus JD. It's a real showdown at 10 past 9 this morning. And then David Collins from the show last night. What are you laughing about?
Just the real showdown. It's a good choice of words, that's all.
It's a showdown that the
David
outcome
Collins
is
being
almost...
Nathan's father.
Yes, very good chat with David Collins on last night's show with the other Nathan. That's 9:30. So OTBM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. As I said, do keep those comments coming into us over the course of the morning with you between now and 10. And thanks as well, I should mention, to our OTBM partners, Gillette. We have a Gillette Labs heated razor to give away for Father's Day. You can just like and share the post that's up on our social channels. Went out a little bit earlier on, so you won't have a huge amount of scrolling to do. You can be in with a chance to win the perfect Father's Day prize. Up next, we're going to be hearing. Up next, here is the former Ireland international Kevin Cabalon reflecting on the job that Stephen Kenny has done in the past fortnight.
OTB AM.
All right, it is. We wanted to bookend the end of the international window, end of a cluster of games, obviously for the Republic of Ireland, and to do just that, there's only one man we could ask on board. Kevin Kilbane, good morning to you.
Good morning, Adrian. How are you doing?
Good. How are you going?
Everything's great. Everything's really good, actually. Yeah.
What's the schedule of classic games for the weekend?
I've got a bit of MLS action this week. I've actually done the World Cup playoffs this week, which was quite interesting watching the games. I did Peru against Australia on Monday and
what a game.
Costa Rica against New Zealand. Well, they weren't classics, as you maybe can well imagine, with the lack of goals in the game, but they were interesting to do anyway. They were interesting games to do, and I'm looking at it genuinely in comparison to where Ireland are in the world rankings. Costa Rica are ranked 31 in the world, I think. Peru ranked 22. Judging from what I've seen in the last couple of games, especially, we're well beyond those teams. And the rankings are always, you always look at the rankings sometimes and think, how are some sides in certain positions? But some of the teams that you see, particularly when I've watched a lot of the CONCACAF region here, Mexico are up around the top 10, so the US. And from what I've seen, I don't see any reason why we can't get anywhere near those teams.
Well, it depends on, you mentioned like benchmarking off the last 2 games. I'm with you. Yeah. Obviously, the first 2 games not so great. So your overall view then on like whether what we've seen now over the last 4 games collectively is the growing pains almost of a team who are on the up and an upward curve of improving football that will hopefully lead to improving results, or are the first 2 games particularly more of a cause for concern for you?
Probably a bit of both. Are we any clearer over the last 4 games? I think the last 2 games has give us real optimism again. Was it Lithuania we played at the end of the last window, and we finished that with thinking, right, here we go again. Troy Parrott scored that late goal, and And then looking across the course of the last 6 or 7 prior to that, we felt as though that the team was moving forward. I certainly felt that anyway. I know I've not really been on with you guys talking around then. It's been difficult really to get on to fit it in time-wise. But
can't get you.
I don't know about that. No, you just don't pay enough. But anyway, but no, genuinely, I think it has been very good, hasn't it? I think we all accepted that, and we will look forward to this Armenia game. And honestly, I was disappointed, of course, like many was disappointed, but I kind of understood. I was actually quite impressed with the first 20 minutes. The first half maybe petered out a little bit from 20, 25 minutes onwards. But the way that we started the game, I felt that we got in behind Armenia. I felt that Josh Cullen was on the ball early. He was trying to pass forward, and we would play on the front foot. I remember a pass early on from Nathan Collins, a longer ball. Ogbena's good movement. Ogbeni played very well for the first 25 minutes of that game. And I felt there was, there's something to play on it. It was just the second half. And realistically, when you look at it, end of season like it was, the lads trying to get go again, the heat, there's a lot of extenuating circumstances, wasn't there, why that game probably turned out the way that it did. Disappointing nonetheless, really disappointing second half. We just didn't get going. The shape of the team looked wrong. I think distances all over the pitch looked quite poor. And the most disappointing thing out of everything was the Ukraine game, because you look for a response. We're coming back home. We've had that 90 minutes under our belt. There was a lot of players and personnel that have played the game. Yes, travel, don't get me wrong, takes it out of players. Maybe there could have been 1 or 2 more changes in that game, in the Ukraine game. I think Stephen Kenny might look at that himself and maybe feel as though that he could have made 1 or 2 more changes. But they were flat and there was no tempo in the game. There was nothing really for me to look back on that game. I know you were there with your son, Adrian, weren't you at the game? But there was nothing in that game where I felt, I don't know, we had more shots. I think we had more shots at goal, certainly at goal, whether they're on target or not, than we had across the Scotland game. But there was no, I don't think that the distances was right. The shape looked off. The players didn't look like they were prepared to make a tackle. We were too easily played through. At home, after a performance like Armenia, I expected a response, and I don't think we got that. But clearly, in the Scotland game, I think we saw the character. I think we saw maybe close to what Stephen Kenny will be looking at towards his strongest 11 in that game. And then we took that into the second Ukraine game, and I was really pleased.
Kevin, it's been a roller coaster, less than a fortnight. You go back to lunchtime on the Saturday Irish time, just before the Armenia match, and I can't remember a more positive feeling towards Stephen Kenny's team. Then you fast forward to after the first Ukraine game, and I was saying during the week, Kev, I'd say 99% of the comments coming into OTB AM on that Wednesday morning was Kenny's got to go. He's got to go. Yeah. Then the next 2 games, we're back to here. We're back to, it's brilliant. Yeah. It's really positive. Where do you stand on the Stephen Kenny reign after a tumultuous fortnight?
No, I think do you know what I think is, Colin, as ex-players, I honestly think there's maybe more of an obligation for us to be a little bit more supportive of the team. I do feel that, and certainly of the manager as well. We're all going to have an opinion about who's playing well and who should be in the team and things like that. But ultimately, when the team starts, we have to be supportive. And that was the disappointing thing for me watching the Ukraine game. And even, sometimes, I can be quite vocal, especially if I've had a beer on Twitter at times, which maybe I should shut my mouth. But when you're watching games at times, you kind of get into the swing of it, don't you? You throw something out there, and when you're disappointed watching the team. But I think in answer to your question, Colin, across his reign, I think there has been steady improvement. We have to say that there has been. I think he was given the extension to his contract because of that. I think we accepted there was more to come from these players. We maybe get into 1 or 2 individuals in a while, but I think overall it has been positive. But I think a majority of the games that we've played, first half of games has been my big disappointment. But looking at Ukraine the other night and looking at maybe this window, Colin, look at how we started the game. And it's simplistic. It's simple to say, but we've actually rolled the ball back to Nathan Collins or Shane Duffy, whoever it was. We've gone long, played in their half to start the game. It gets the crowd up. We're always going to play a different style of football as it is. When the ball is circulated, I think we won a corner in the first couple of minutes against Ukraine, got the team right on the front foot. I think we had a foul early on. We ended up getting the good attacks down the right-hand side. It's positive starts. I don't think we saw that early on from Stephen Kenny. And watching the team play early on. That was the disappointing thing from my point of view was, look, we are going to see a different style of football, but where is that little bit of bite in the tackles? Where is it going to come from? And I'd look primarily really at someone like Jason Malumbi. I don't think he's been amazing in the last couple of games. I think he's played well, but look at him in the Scotland game, biting into tackles, really ferocious, getting around the pitch and covering the ground really well, which he does. I think early on when he first got into the team, and I have total sympathy with this because I did exactly the same when I first came as a young player. You feel, though, maybe you try and do something different. You try and adapt your game a little bit. And I think he felt as though, I felt watching Malumbi, he had to be on the ball more, had to, get it and make things tick over. That's, in my opinion, that's maybe Josh Cullen's job behind him. You can see they clearly have a good relationship. And it's almost as if Malumbi's best game is when the old adage of earn the right to play, go and put your foot in, be aggressive. And he has that in abundance. And I think when he does that, he can then let the rest of his game take shape off the back of it. And that's been the standout thing, I feel, maybe in the last 6 or 8, take the Armenia and Ukraine game out. I think it's been more aggressive without the ball. And if I look across maybe his reign, our best performances, even the Scotland game, even Ukraine the other night, a majority of the best performance we've had less of the ball, which is quite surprising when you look at the performances we've had. And even Ukraine the other night, I think we only had about 40% possession, but they're equal. We were Ukraine's equal in the final third with our threat. That was certainly the case against Scotland. We were way more of a threat than Scotland. And I won't have people saying to me Scotland were that bad that helped us play well, which I can take your argument. They were bad. But how many times have we played against sides that haven't been great and we've just kind of played to their level? We had to raise that level and we haven't seen that enough. And that was great to see, particularly with it being at home, with the response that was needed after the Ukraine game.
All right. Everyone's been asked. So I have to ask you. Nathan Collins, Michael Obafemi or Troy Parrott, your favourite goal of this window?
Rank them. Rank them.
Better again. Power rankings. 3 to 1.
No, do you know what? Before I start here, I messaged Nathan earlier on. We've got amazing coverage here now in Canada with the Zone have picked up the Nations League rights, and I was always scratching around trying to get an Ireland game over the last year or two, trying to, as you well know yourself, Colin, Adrian, you're trying to get dodgy feeds to try to watch a game, and then and if you miss a game or miss certain parts of the game, it's difficult to watch back. But we have amazing coverage here now. But last night I flicked the Zone on here and they have a top 10 of this current Nation League window, top 10 goals. And surprisingly, honestly, Nathan Collins is in at 4. He's the 4th best goal. Obafemi was at 6. There were some goals that were in there. Like Troy Parrott's wasn't even in the top 10. And they had Erling Haaland's goal against, I think it was Sweden. I think it was the ball across the 6-yard box and it was a tap-in. Like it was, however, they want to get the big names in, obviously. But I wasn't having it. But in answer to your question, in what order? Well, Nathan Collins' goal, it's so unique, isn't it? I think let's say that. I think Obafemi's was as well. But I mean, judging watching Ireland over the years, they're all unique goals. I have to say that. But Collins is special, isn't it? Given that he's a defender, stepping in. And I heard your analysis yesterday when you were talking with Johnny on or the other day, Colin. And there was very few options for him to do what he actually did. So it was very instinctive. He got a little bit of luck with the bobble. He could have gone with his left foot, but he really had to go with his right foot to finish it. So everything kind of took place. So I think it was a special goal. Obafemi's, I think, honestly could have gone into roll Z. And if it had gone in roll Z, it was a hit. It was a hit and hope almost. You know, there was a lot of feel to it and it was a great goal, don't get me wrong. But I'd have to go with Collins. And number 2, I'd probably have to say Parrott and Obafemi 3. That's what I would say.
It's a sound ranking. You've got 2 minutes before you have to go on to your next media appointment. So there's one thing that I want to ask before we go, which is this narrative that's taken on about the Duffy versus Collins bit, right? So forgetting about the goal for a second and whether having Collins in the team can shape and change the shape of the team and the mindset of the team and the tactics of the team in terms of not having to play as deep to cope with the lack of pace from Duffy. Your thoughts on that?
I think Shane Duffy is going to be under a bit of pressure now, more pressure than probably we all thought. We know his threat from set pieces. We know that he carries that for us. I haven't really seen it enough from Nathan Collins, whether he can carry the same sort of threat. But Collins' all-round game over the 4 games, it was incredible to watch his development. I spoke earlier on even saying to you before about the Armenia game. I felt his distribution from back to front was so good in that Armenia game in the first 20 minutes. Even his long pass, his short passing, so good. I think his reading of the game, as we saw, for stepping in the goal that he scored. We've clearly seen that Collins can play right side of the three centre halves, but is he going to get Coleman in? Is he going to get Omobamidele when he's fit back in there? Because Doherty is clearly going to start at right wing back. He's our best player in that position and has to start there, unless you can put Doherty at left wing back, which he's probably still causing a few problems for us. McLean was brilliant against Scotland, I thought, absolutely brilliant. It was exactly what was needed, but that's a problem position for us. I'm sorry to go off on a tangent here, Adrian, but I think Duffy's under pressure now. I do think he's under a bit of pressure, because I think Collins, in my opinion, if I'm looking at world players like him, I looked at Matthijs de Ligt and look at those two similar ages. De Ligt gets a 100 million move to Juventus from Ajax, and there's very little when you're looking at them. I know de Ligt has got more experience, and people laugh at you when you say things like this, but he's very much like de Ligt in how he plays, very aggressive at times when need be, maybe could be more aggressive, and I think that's the case with de Ligt as well. But he's so good on the ball that you see him dropping off, and he makes things look very easy. And I'm listening to some of the guys of the day comparing him with Van Dijk, but if he continues like this, we know he potentially could be an all-time great. He's got the pace of Richard Dunn. Richard Dunn was absolutely the best defender I played with alongside throughout my career. And, if he goes on to do half what Richard Dunn has done, then we've got a real prospect on our hands. Yeah, we have.
Can't be expecting those worldies every week. We'll take them when they're there. Kev, Good man, you've busy schedule. Thanks a million.
Yeah, can I just talk to you about the goal though as well? I want to just say one thing before a goal. I think James McLean's got a bit of criticism for that goal against Ukraine. And I think you'd messaged me earlier on to say that David Conley had given Nathan Collins criticism for the goal as well. And I've got sympathy with both, I have to say that. Simply because if you look at Darragh Lenihan when he picks up the ball, when we're in possession and he goes long, there's probably an option for Lenihan to go back towards Collins, who dropped off to receive the pass from Lenihan, and also another option maybe to go inside to, I think it was Cullen, who then could have switched it out to McLean. So McLean's anticipating that. When the ball's given away, McLean actually makes up the ground to get back, but just doesn't get back far enough. And I've played in that position, and it always is, Adrian, about cat and mouse. Can you influence what the opposition's going to do? Can you play the wrong side of him and force him back? And Yarmolenko, realistically, that's not his game. He is quite lazy at times, and he would always play up. So McLean got caught out because of that, and I had sympathy for him. But I don't buy the fact is that Collins could have done more, because I think he was looking to receive the pass. And say if you freeze frame at times, the game does look different. But I think he had too much to do, and I think it was good play, and it was a good, well-worked goal by Ukraine in the end, really.
Yeah, we'll look forward to tracking his progress over the next while. Kev, good man. Thanks a million.
Thanks, Adrian. Thanks, Colin.
OTB AM.
Kevin Cabalon in a conversation with myself and Colm there yesterday, reflecting all things Ireland. Now it's almost 8 o'clock. You're watching OTB AM. Delighted to have you with us this morning. Do keep your comments coming into us. The Hockey World Cup will start in 2 weeks' time. 2 weeks' time, games in Spain and Holland. Ireland are going to open up against the Dutch on July the 2nd at Amsterdam's Wagener Stadium. Then on to play Chile 3 days later, and Germany the day after that. 5 uncapped players have made the Ireland squad, and one of our heroes from the 2018 World Cup is back and hoping for more of the same. With us in studio this morning, Roisin Upton. Good morning to you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks a million for coming in.
Delighted to be here. Yeah.
Germany, Holland and Chile. That's tough.
It is a tough pool. The only pool out of 4 to have 3 European teams in it, and I think the standard of hockey in Europe speaks for itself. We have the most nations competing in the World Cup, so yeah, it's not an easy task. And as you said, we're opening up with the world champions on the first night in what will be a packed out Wagener Stadium. So you can imagine the excitement in the squad. 5 new caps, 15 out of our 20 travelling players haven't been to a World Cup. So everybody's buzzing at the moment.
What's the chat about, world champions, Olympic champions? You've played them recently and the results haven't gone your way. What's the chat about the Holland game in terms of the expectation out of it, or the fact that it's the opening game, you're straight into it, it's a tough task.
I suppose we've actually been having a lot of discussion about it recently. So it's our 3rd major tournament back to back, and we're just wanting to learn all the time. How did we approach the World Cup in 2018 versus how we approached the Olympics, versus now with a completely new, inexperienced group in many ways, how we're going to approach it. And the only thing we've been talking about is one game at a time, and that if we perform to our ability, you don't really know what's going to happen. So we're chasing performances. Obviously, you want results at the World Cup, you want to progress through the stages, but as you said, it's no easy task first game against the Dutch. But I think I can count on one hand the amount of times I've played the Dutch in my career. So definitely
you want to play
looking
against the best. And the fact that it's the first night almost is nearly a good thing in the sense that they're coming cold into it. Huge expectation given what they have in the bank, and the fact that they're at home and it's the opening night.
Yeah, I suppose we'll go into this World Cup and teams won't underestimate us. And each World Cup will have its own challenges. A lot of these countries, 10 out of the top 15 countries in the world are competing in a pro league year round. So they're getting that competition. We're playing the world champions opening up. I think it's just going to be complete excitement. Maybe they'll underestimate us. They'll look to the Germans, who they've recently played in the Pro League. They had 2 close games against them. It was 3-2 and 4-2 after the Germans were up 2-0 in one of the games. So hugely competitive there. But yeah, it's just looking to test yourselves against the best in the world.
Does it feel different playing against the Dutch? Is there something different that they do? Is it just individual quality doing the simple things right, or how does it differ from every other match you play?
Yeah, I suppose every country has their own style, and with the Dutch, what they do looks incredibly simple, but I'd say the main thing is their ability to constantly be pre-scanning and know where they're going next. So their positioning is constantly open shoulders, looking to go forward. I suppose it's very similar to soccer when you think about the best midfielders in the world, constantly, having 360 vision, knowing where they're going next. The Dutch will be very similar and set the standards for that. Whereas then you'll go into a game against the Germans, who might possess the ball for 50, 60 passes, and you just have to be happy and loving being, defending. That's what we have to do against the Germans, and then we'll get our opportunities to counter-attack. And that's a big aspect of our game that we've been working on over the last couple of years. That would feel more comfortable and maybe taking a couple of those opportunities, whereas before we knew we were going into 60-minute battle, sitting in our 25. And then the second game against Chile is coming up against a country that we don't know a whole lot about. This is their first major tournament. They haven't been to an Olympics or a World Cup, so similar to ourselves 4 years ago.
And are you kind of like wargaming for that Chile situation, which differs just based on rankings to the Germany and especially the Netherlands situation?
Yeah, I suppose, if we want to progress through the stages, beating Chile would technically be the easiest way to do it. So it's definitely a target game for us. And it sits nicely, I think, in our pool. We play against the Dutch and we'll have 2 rest days, and then we'll play against Chile before playing against Germany the following day. So we'll have, they'll have played a game in our pool. We'll have a lot of video by that stage to see what kind of styles they're playing, because right now we're looking at video from last summer, and yourselves, a lot can change in a year.
You were saying before, Andy, you're just going into camp now. Today,
we are.
Is it?
Yeah, we're playing another series. Actually, we're just back from Japan about 2 weeks, but they're coming over this way. Yeah. Preparing for the World Cup. They'll head on to Spain afterwards, 4-game test series in UCD.
And you might get very familiar with Japan over the next while, because you might end up getting them sort of later on in the tournament as well, obviously.
Yeah, well, I suppose the process for how you get out of your pool is very different, depending on where you sit. Like, if you come first, you'll go straight to a quarter-final. If you finish second or third, you're going into a playoff game with, I think, Pool D, which would be countries from Spain that would fly over, and then you have playoff games. And then if you come fourth, you'll go into a bottom 4 playoff game, just to see where you match up 13th to 16th, just for ranking points.
I was listening to an interview that you gave with Nathan. It was before the World Cup final in 2018 last night, and you were talking about the goals that you'd set out, and obviously everybody understood that you'd way overshot where the goals were at. Yeah. You were saying we just wanted to get out of our pool and see how we went in the quarterfinals. Have you discussed that yet in terms of this tournament?
Well, it's much the same. Yeah. We're ranked 12th in the world, and we were chasing consistency and wanting to be in these tournaments, but even though other countries know more about us, there isn't really any expectation. We didn't come out of our pool last year at the Olympics, so now looking at this squad, we've been together, this actual set squad, about 6 weeks, because there was a Junior World Cup in December that got postponed because of COVID, and it didn't end up happening until April. So a good chunk of our players, 5 or 6 of those players, were playing in that. And then you had, I suppose, the likes of me and a good crew of us that had gone back to work for the last year, and that were balancing, finally getting a rest after a 5-year Olympic cycle. So we've come together in the last, it was just pre the Japan trip, to be honest. Right. And we've had a really good preparation so far. Everybody's buzzing, but in terms of targeting games, I suppose, Chile is the obvious one, and we'll see what we can do against the Dutch and the Germans.
Is there a freshness to that almost, in the sense that you get a bit of a breather from it? The new players have come in, there's obviously been some retirements. Does that, because like, I mean, on the face of it, you're looking at maybe a more inexperienced squad heading into it, but there's a freshness maybe to some of that as well, accentuating the positives of that almost.
Yeah, you have to, I think, and it's been great in the sense that it's also pushed us who've been around for quite a while. You know, they're questioning how we do certain things, we're refining things, we're doing things a little bit differently, because things can become stale. I think
in terms of tactics, like, or
yeah, in terms of tactics, in terms of, you know, flair, I suppose when you first come into a squad, you're not thinking about pressure, you're not thinking about, you know, I suppose when we had gone to a World Cup in 2018, we knew how special it was and how hard it was to get there. That core squad had been together, and I was one of the last into it, but they'd been together for 6 or 7 years, and now you're looking at a brand new squad that's been together a couple of months. I think, as you said, with the experience we've lost from last year, it's circa 1,600 caps from our squad of 22, 23 going into this World Cup. So with that, we just have an unbelievable amount of energy, enthusiasm and excitement, and I suppose the not overthinking, that's left to us to really, you know, knock home the tactics and get people up to speed as much as we can without overwhelming them, and just allowing them to enjoy this.
How do you ensure that the 1,600 caps don't go missing when it comes to the transition to what is essentially a new squad?
I suppose it's just having those conversations with who out of us that's still there. We have 5 from the World Cup a couple of years ago that competed in it, but we have, you know, 10 or 11 that competed in the Olympics last year, and you're wondering, you know, how did we approach each game? Were we on the same page? It's just having all those honest conversations that we might have had before, because we didn't have the opportunity to debrief tournament hockey. You know, it's quite different to soccer and rugby, where you're playing back-to-back games. So when you're in a tournament, you're not getting to say, God, did we perform there or did we not? Because straight away you have to refocus. And then you go away and the tournament ends and you have a break for a couple of months, and those conversations might never happen. So we've had to, you know, we've been working with our team psychologist, Mags McCarthy, in ensuring that we're just giving as much information that we can, but at the same time, as I said, you don't want to overwhelm people.
That's interesting, because I guess that is like one of the huge differences, given like all your big games are in a tournament setting. I guess most modern playing groups in every sport are player-led at the moment anyway, but I presume even more so in that setup, it's very much figuring things out for yourself on a game-to-game basis.
Yeah, I think actually in the past 6 weeks, it's probably been the most player-led that I've experienced within the squad. Just because I think it's easier to have small conversations sometimes. You know, things go amiss when you're sitting in a room of 30 people and you're just talking at people. Like, do people understand it or don't they? Whereas if we're able to sit down together and to look over a video for 20 minutes and you're asking me about different clips or situations, then of course that's how you're going to learn the most. And that's probably an untapped area that we're looking to just get better at.
Is your sense that the quality of this squad can be as good as the one we saw in 2018?
I think so. Myself and Katie Mullen, the captain, were only chatting about it recently, that it would actually be very exciting if this squad got to play against the one from 4 years ago, just because with our new head coach, he's from Australia, Sean Dancer, and he's bringing more of an attacking style to how we're trying to play. And, you know, don't get me wrong, we're not the Dutch or the Argentinians, but instead of just building off our defence, we're hoping to hang on to the ball for longer phases. You're hoping to play more than just a long ball game, actually, you know, gain a bit of territory and put other teams under pressure. So I think we've had a few strings to our bow in that sense. So yeah, it'd be a good match.
Who would win?
Sure, I'd have to back the team now.
You have no choice at the minute. That's non-negotiable. And does because it's a similar conversation as what happened around the Irish football team in terms of that, you know, trying to play a bit of football and having that attacking thing. And you don't necessarily, I know, like obviously it's been bits of criticism of the team over the last while, but they actually haven't been that bad defensively. You don't necessarily have to give up a huge amount defensively to add that attacking stuff in. Has it come seamlessly enough, or have you found that if we're giving a bit more here, we're losing a bit over here and we just have to accept that?
I think where we might lose some defensive focus might be in training, because we mightn't be doing as many defensive drills where it's chaos and, you know, it's 5v8 and you're in deep defence and, you know, there's balls being thrown everywhere and you don't have time to set up and it's unstructured. So we mightn't have focused on that as much. But we're hoping that we bring that as part of being Irish, as part of that, you know, pride in your defence. So I suppose that on the flip side, we've done a lot more counter-attacking hockey. You I suppose small-sided games in a room like this where you're 1-on-4 and you're trying to hold on to the ball, getting your eyes up earlier, pre-scanning, knowing where you're going next. All those things have been really important, but I suppose you can always set your defence that little bit higher, so instead of just I suppose collapsing back into our own half, we're looking to get out and get into teams' faces a bit more and just be more aggressive.
Have you found your own role? You mentioned there about like the maybe more player driven side of it. Have you found, like 4 years down the line, that your own role or your own voice has become a little bit more like almost in supporting Katie? Or how have you found that? How have you found your role within the team, not in the playing side but in the leadership bit or the speaking bit? How has that developed over the last 4 years?
Yeah, I suppose on the pitch I would say much the same. I love to communicate, and I'm sitting in a position in front of kind of a back three where it's what's known as a free man, or I suppose in soccer terms a defensive centre midfielder. So you're constantly trying to put out fires before they happen and communicate to people what's happening in a structural sense. But I suppose off the pitch, definitely, yeah, I've probably found my voice a bit more, feel a bit more confident, just chatting to people. But I suppose I didn't have to before either. We had a lot of strong voices, we had a lot of leaders. Shirley McKay, the most capped player in the country across all sports, Hannah Matthews, Anne O'Flanagan, Chloe Watkins. We had it in abundance, so my voice wasn't needed. So I'm actually really enjoying that aspect now of my role changing again.
What are you doing like?
It's just what you said, like it's just, I suppose you're trying to fill people with confidence now. You're just taking more ownership on and off the pitch. We have a leadership group of 4 of us, and you're just trying to share the load as much as we can and be as player driven, whether it's us setting up meetings and not being led by coaches, coming with our own clips, debriefing. It's us, setting up Zooms midweek when we aren't together in Abbottstown in camp. Just trying to do all the extra things, especially in the last 6 weeks, because we have 6 weeks to prepare for a World Cup in some senses, and I know a lot of countries will actually, and we've taken positives from it, will be in the same boat, because when you come off the back of a 5-year Olympic cycle, and you've 1 year to prepare for a World Cup, there's a lot of balls in the air and squads have changed, and as I said, people are gone back to work and doing different things, deciding will they continue retirement. So it's been a hectic 6 weeks, but you can imagine the excitement with 15 people going to their first World Cup.
Can I just ask that what you said a moment ago about trying to tap into that Irish thing of work ethic and putting them under pressure or whatever it may be? What do you talk about when you're having those conversations in camp, when you're talking about the Irish attributes that you might be able to bring to the pitch?
I suppose we're frequently talking about winning games is about not conceding goals, and if we're going to concede goals, then we're going to have to score more than the opposition, and it's literally as simple as that. So we know we aren't necessarily a 5-goal scoring team right now. We're not going to go out and beat teams 4 or 5-0, but we can beat a team 1-0 or we can beat a team 2-1. And if we're defensively resound, that we need to get energy from that. I suppose it's a mindset shift to feeling, God, we haven't had possession, and the Germans will do it to you, where you're under the cot for 20 minutes and you haven't got the ball back. And you can either sink into yourselves and keep collapsing and defending your circle, and the pressure is loading on your shoulders. But often it's perceived pressure, and it's in those moments being brave and stepping out and holding your structure and gaining a lot of energy that you can't break us down. And that's a big part of, I think, especially going against the Dutch and the Germans, where goal difference will matter in our pool.
So you're thinking now, great, we don't have possession, rather than, oh God, we don't have possession.
You have to, don't you? Because it's the reality. If you're going to go into a game and think otherwise, you're going to be quite misled, So we have to face the reality of the situation. You're playing against 2 of the top 5 teams in the world. The Dutch are first and Germany are 5th. So we need to prepare, and a good performance against Chile, Holland and Germany at this World Cup will look completely different. Will
you speak about 2018 over the next little while, or are you just like, that's done, we'll come back to it again and we'll luxuriate in that for the years to come, but let's forget about that for now? Or are you trying to tap into some of that spirit and bring it into the room almost?
No, I think, that's very much retirement conversations. I don't know if it's probably sank in for any of us until you stop playing. What we achieved back then, it was crazy. But for now, yeah, it's very much just staying in the moment, and we're flying out on Monday week. So the Japanese series is very much our focus. Taking a few more things off that we want to before we get to a World Cup.
Yeah, very exciting. Listen, you've been really good with your time, and we really appreciate you coming in at such a crucial juncture in the preparation. So good luck against Japan over the next while, and hopefully Nathan will be chatting to you again live in the line from, I don't know what it'd be. Is the final in Holland? Obviously it's split over a couple of countries.
Spain, the semi-finals and finals.
Okay, right, okay. Well, hopefully you'll be on the line to Nathan at some point before the World Cup final in a few weeks' time. Thanks a million for coming in. Roisin Upton from the Ireland hockey team, and as I said, they begin the 2022 World Cup. It's against Holland, July 2nd, Amsterdam's Wagner Stadium. We'll have much more on that over the coming weeks as well. It's 8:15. You're watching OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Now, during the ad break upcoming, you're going to hear a highlight of our own Aisling O'Reilly's chat with Owlert the Balla captain Mary Lacey. Talks about how she started playing with her club, and it's from the very latest episode of the brilliant series, the AIB Hero Interviews. AIB, proud sponsors of the football, hurling and camogie All-Ireland Club Championships, and you can check out #TheToughest for much more. We're back next with the GAA Quick Picks.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
I thought, we're back. We're back. But you don't want to get too ahead of yourself. And then see after that, we're back, baby. We're on the train.
Connor, you're like a nippy corner forward hanging out in the corner there. I didn't know we still had you. Go on.
A current club manager at the minute. It's Shamrocks, isn't it, Dahi, in Offaly? Out of a job since this morning. What? Yeah. Or what happened? No, we walked anyway, another day's work.
GAA Late Night. Live every Sunday evening, 8:30 on Twitter Spaces. Follow @OffTheBall.
Mary, what age would you have been when you started out here in the club?
I was around 6 or 7. My first memory actually of playing a match was an under-10 final here in Owlert, and I remember in the first half I got hit in my finger, and I remember, I don't know how, but I remember playing on. I couldn't even hold a hurl, but I still played the whole match because I was captain. And I remember afterwards I ended up down in Arkeen and I had to get an operation. I broke it in 3 places.
Oh my God.
I know. And I remember it must have been a Friday night, because that Sunday our hurlers were in the county final, and I was delighted. I got out that Sunday out of hospital and I got to go see. It was the first county final our hurlers won here. So I suppose it was a first memory, but it was a really good memory.
So they knew at the age of 10 you were going to be hardy.
I know. Growing up along, if we had injuries, I suppose we weren't mollycoddled.
And your mum as well, she played for Wexford. She's well known as playing for Wexford, so she obviously influenced you as well.
Yeah, Mammy was actually always over us the whole way up along. She was mad about camogie. She's a lot of awards. We would have always heard growing up, oh my God, your mum would have been as good as any man on the team. So I suppose that spurred me and my sister on as well.
So what does camogie mean to the people of Owlert?
It means a lot. The people of Owlert have been so good to the camogie team, particularly over the last few years. The amount of sponsorship, and even the last 2 years the support has been immense. We lost a few, I suppose, prominent GAA people in the club over the last 2 years, a few due to COVID as well. So, yeah, it is tough, and those people are remembered. And I suppose camogie and our successes have given people a lift, and it's kind of lifted the spirit of Owlert.
Things that put people off on a first date. Showing up late and getting your name wrong. Always a great start. Looking at their phone more than you? Hello? Someone who only talks about themselves. Oh, really? God, aren't you great? Look, no one said dating is perfect, but at GoDating.ie, we promise we'll always try and find your perfect match. Because somewhere out there, there's someone for you. And GoDating.ie will help you find them. Yes, even you, socks and sandals guy. Go on, go for it with GoDating.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Some of these critics, these pundits, I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
I'd like to play the hard man when they're on it. It's not very pleasant when you're trying to manage a team. All you're looking for is a bit of civility and a bit of decency, but they just miss you like you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
All right, 8:20, OTB AM, Friday morning, Quick Picks. Will, Aisling, morning to you.
Morning, Top of the morning, lads.
How are we doing?
Good now, not too bad. How are you?
All good, I think.
Mildly nervy about a Talton Cup semi-final between our counties, Adrian and Barry, but aside from that,
I'm not that nervous, Will.
Of course you're not. Awfully barely able to train last night due to a virus, and they've lost one of their most important players. So this has all played nicely into Westmeath's hands. Get Kevin Maguire back, and I've got a full team to pick from.
I'm not going to mention the words, Will. I'm not going to mention the words. We'll come back to that game in just a few minutes' time. I don't think we've a leaderboard, have we? This thing is an absolute shambles. It is as bad as the GAA, as a GAA disciplinary system. It's an absolute shambles, and a bit like a GAA disciplinary system, we'll make it up as we go along, a bit closer to the time. So on that basis, let's get straight into the hurling to begin with. Galway and getting the fingers from outside, Colin. That's not the carry on of a Friday morning at this early in the morning. Galway, Cork.
Any idea who's winning?
Yeah, I'm sure I'm thereabouts, Aisling. After that, I'm not.
You were at the bottom, Adrian.
I absolutely.
The viewers are winning, Aisling, with entertainment. That's it.
Tommy, that's right. Come on, Will. Tommy is Tommy, I think.
Okay.
Galway, Cork to begin with, and it's Galway for everybody apart from you, Aisling. So you better lead us off.
Oh God, right. Jeez, I'm surprised with that. Right. Well, I was at the Leinster final, and I seen Galway that day, and they were absolutely devastated after that. And I think the biggest thing was that they walked away and they just didn't perform. So they came away from that game knowing we actually just didn't show up. We didn't play the hurling that we know we can play. And yeah, they were just shook by, I think, the physicality of Kilkenny, and they just, they were just way stronger on the day. And I just think to bounce back from that hurt, it's going to be tough to do. When Cork, I've only seen them once now in person this year. I've seen them against Tipperary, which I know Tipperary haven't really been at the races this year, but I just found that things were clicking for them. Conor Lahan, I think he's unbelievable for them this year, and yeah, he's just been putting up some great scores. And I think overall, I just think there's big performances in them, and it took them a while to get going, but I just feel that they might edge it because of how Galway played in that Leinster final. I think it's going to be tough to come back from that, but yeah, it's gonna be close. It was a hard one to pick, but I do stick by Cork doing it.
It absolutely has one of those fixtures that could make mugs of for the rest of us. Patrick Horgan on the bench for Cork again. Will I see this morning? There is this thing of, could they be better off without him? And we'll see. Does he start obviously on the day? Maybe they are better off without him. I don't know. But the absence of his name from the team sheet, if it plays out that way, almost in itself gives Galway a bit of a lift. Yeah.
Look, I'm not entirely convinced that he won't start. He's obviously named within the matchday squad, so they could make a late change before the game at Temple Stadium tomorrow. Look, there is a strong case to say that their best hurling of the year so far has come in the last three fixtures, and they have maybe benefited since the Waterford game when Tim O'Mahony went into that inside forward line and creates a different option to Patrick Horgan. We've seen the stats throughout the championship that Conor Lahan has been getting through a remarkable amount of work, and the rest of the Cork forward line, and maybe despite the championship's best strikesman of all time, the top scorer in the championship of all time, he's probably the best shooter that they have among their group, but maybe the group works better without him on the pitch. I'm still not entirely convinced that he won't start tomorrow, though. This is the toughest game of the weekend to actually call, though. Like, this one is a literal 50-50. Galway have won the last 4 championship meetings against Cork. You can't overlook entirely, though, the way that Galway played in the Leinster final, and particularly their inefficiency in front of goal. Their shooting was really poor. But this should set up nicely for Galway's physicality against this Cork team. They'll feel that they can bully them. They'll feel that there's been one poor performance in Henry Shefflin's side so far this year. They dust off what happened at Croke Park in the Leinster final, where there was some good stuff from Galway, but very poor work in front of goal, and that they can get back to form against Cork. The big worry I would have if you were back in Galway in this game is that Cork's pace and that forward unit could cause problems for Galway during the game. Ooh, this for me is an absolute coin toss, but I just got to edge towards Galway in this one to get to the semi-finals.
It feels like it's a coin toss because it's a fixture we don't see very often in the hurling championship. Like you say, it's 4 wins and a bounce for Galway. The last of those was in 2015. So when I'm looking at this, I'm not sure does it feed into it too much. But for me, it was listening to Tommy Walsh during the week, and I think Tommy actually tipped Cork, but it was his analysis of Galway that got me a little bit hopeful for Galway. Was that he was saying that their Leinster final showing was down to inaccuracy, and that with a bit more accuracy up front, a bit more of a sharp edge in attack, they would have won that game against Kilkenny. And for me, that's a thing that is not even fixable over the last little while, but something that could have just gone the other way for them. They could well be Leinster champions at this moment. I do think, though, that there's like a randomness around these quarter-finals, and it's going to be a bit of a mad game. I'd agree with Will that it's probably the hardest game of the weekend to call, but it's just that before 2 weeks ago, I would have said that Galway have a higher ceiling than Cork and are a better team than Cork. How damaging is that defeat in Croke Park to Galway is then the question. And after listening to Tommy Welch during the week, I'm not entirely sure it is. I think it's just that accuracy bit that they need to fix. And I guess because I'm picking Galway, I predict that they will fix that.
They need to fix their puck out as well, Eoin, which is the other huge problem that they had against Kilkenny. I'm sure that Aidan Murphy has been working on that, and the rest of the Galway management team would have been working on it for the last couple of weeks. They gave away a tremendous amount of ball back to Kilkenny in their own puck outs. Their own puck out was very slow, and that it kind of added a little bit to the poor shooting options that they took when they did get ball back when they recovered their longer puck outs. So if they can improve that, I think this Galway team, I'd agree with you, probably have a higher ceiling than Cork. And with Cork, we're basing everything on recent form. But then again, recent form might be very important if they come in with a huge team behind them in Thurles tomorrow.
Yeah, it's I suppose like the when you look at it, there is definitely a case for Cork. The defeats this year in the championship have been against Limerick and Clare, who most people consider to be the best two teams in the country. It's probably it's maybe an unfair stick to have beaten them with, in the sense of the quality of the opposition and consistency, really, for both of them. Well, isn't it? Like that's what both sets of fans are crying out for year on year from both of these teams. They just want to see a bit more consistency.
Yeah, I think if you were a Cork supporter, you would be really concerned if the performance is something like going back to Thurles, Waterford in the league final, and then the performance, particularly second half against Limerick. They perform like that, they're in big trouble against Galway tomorrow. Similarly, if you're a Galway supporter, you're just hoping that it's one bad day in that Leinster final and that they can put all those issues behind them. I think they still have to work out some of their positions within the team. But again, if they can get Mannion firing, if they can get Conor Whelan firing, and I really did not expect that Keenan Fahey would be anywhere near the team. I thought he was going to serve a 2-game ban. But this is what happens when the CCCC decide to review evidence on Teams as opposed to in person, and somebody in Galway was clever enough to pick up that little loophole, and eventually it's led to 3 players being cleared for this weekend, and perhaps even far more importantly for Clare, the fact they've got 2 of their key players in Peter Duggan and Rory Hayes available.
It's absolutely bonkers. We'll move on to that game now that you mention it. Clare against Wexford. Here's how we've gone, and let's have a look now and see. We're going to come to that in a second. I suspect that it's and it is Clare across the board. Clare for everybody.
Unanimous. Well, sorry, no, it's not always unanimous things that blow up in our faces, but it generally is.
But I think that I think that like the only sort of slight caveat is maybe for Clare with the. Like I said, they probably are considered to be the second best team in the country at the minute. Perhaps actually the slight emotional come down almost from having run Limerick so close the last day, and maybe the physical come down of obviously it going all the way into extra time and all that. Like maybe that's the one caveat, but like we talked about the ceiling of Cork and Galway, the ceiling of these two teams is vastly different.
Yeah, I do think it's going to be a lot closer than we think. And we talked to Tommy Walsh the week, me and Eoin, and he actually thought that Clare, trying to bounce back from this will be extremely tough for them, when I didn't really think it would be as tough, because I think that they're definitely the second most informed team maybe all year so far, and I think they'll be raring to get back out there and put up another big performance and show that they should be going a lot further this year. This shouldn't be where they drop out, and I didn't think at all that they would be coming off the back of a loss and it'll be tough for them, when Tommy was really concerned in that way that, it would be tough for them. I think that the hurling that they played all year, they're a brilliant team. It's been brilliant to see them really coming to their potential. And yeah, the only thing with Wexford is, look, they are so dangerous when they get going. When you see the likes of Leach and Conor McDonald link up inside, they're very dangerous to stop. But now you're seeing Clare getting the likes of Peter Duggan, Rory Hayes, successful appeal their bans as well. So they have this boost again coming in. So it's a tough one to call. I do think it's going to be a lot closer than we think. But I do think that Clare will definitely edge it.
Are you having the closeness, Will, or what's your prediction of points difference here?
I would have thought it would have been a lot closer if the 2 lads were suspended as opposed to cleared midweek. Look, Damien Wreck has obviously got a very important detailing job to do on Tony Kelly. We expect tomorrow afternoon. If he can try and keep Tony Kelly anyway quiet at all, Wexford will be able to keep that scoreline a lot closer than they will if Tony Kelly is running around and gets the freedom of Semple Stadium as we saw in the Munster final. I don't know, it's a huge boost for Clare to have the two guys back. I don't buy the idea that psychologically they're going to have any issues coming back from the Munster final. I think if anything, they might be enamoured from the fact that they've been able to keep Limerick level on 3 different occasions after 70 minutes this season. And okay, extra time ran away from them a little bit. I think Limerick had some superior options from the bench, but it wasn't down to anything blowing up in Clare's face or anything like that. They took that game right to the wire in Semple in the Munster final. I think they've had enough of a break to come back. Wexford, if they're going to look for positives, Lee Chin has come in and has improved their free taking, and he's been free scoring the last couple of games. They performed when the back was up against the wall against Kilkenny, and everyone was probably tipping against them going into that fixture. So they're probably coming in under the radar, and they'll feel like they can go and give this a right good battle. They got to get Rory O'Connor into the game. They've got to get Conor MacDonald firing. A lot has to go right for Wexford for this to be close, I think. And I'd be very, very surprised if it's not Clare going to an All-Ireland semi-final.
Is there a different dynamic here, I wonder, like just to try and temper our expectations here on Clare a little bit, even though we've all tipped them. So is there just a different dynamic about Clare now, playing Wexford, a team that they are heavily favoured to beat, compared to literally every game in Munster, where, not that they came from nowhere to come second in Munster, but most people wouldn't have had them in their top 3. So it's not just the Limerick games where they had this sort of fighting underdog chance. It kind of felt like every game that Clare went into, they had this sort of underdog mentality. Now that things have shifted considerably, where they are expected to put on a performance this weekend and expected to beat Wexford by a few points, I just wonder how that might actually factor into their performance this weekend. Also, when we're assessing Clare, are Clare the second best team in the country, or are Clare actually just the number 1 team when it comes to beating or potentially beating Limerick? I think those are two very different things. Now, in fairness, if you come second in Munster, you're probably going to be close to being the second best team in Ireland anyway. The table doesn't lie, to use that old cliche. But just those two things are giving me a little bit of cause for concern. Like reading Davy Fitz's column this week as well, he says that it's been given the prime fixture in Thurles this weekend because the Chiefs realise that this is actually going to be the best game of the weekend. And I'm not sure, I always get nervous when I see a unanimous pick in these quick picks, but those two factors are in the back of my head. But again, those are intangibles, and when you look at the actual things you can quantify, you have to back Clare for this.
It is a perfectly valid question as to whether they're more suited to play Limerick versus a Kilkenny or a Galway, and we'll see about that starting this weekend. Right, let's move on to the football. We're going to move into the Tailteann Cup semi-finals, obviously, and we're going to kick off at Westmeath Offaly. Sorry, we're going to kick off at Sligo Cavan, and it's Cavan across the board here. Aisling, I don't know what case there is to be made for Sligo here. You're not feeling this one's going to be close, are you?
Not really. I know Sligo, they bet London, then they went on to beat Leitrim then in the quarter-final, that penalty shootout. And then Cavan, obviously, we know they bet Down and then Fermanagh. So the only concern is that at the moment, Cavan haven't been tested other than coming off, say, their Ulster games. So that's my only concern, that in this last few games, they haven't been tested. So is there a bit of complacency going to slip in there? But I think overall, if you look at the team, I think Cavan are a hell of a lot stronger. I think at the very start of the Tailteann Cup, I definitely tipped them to go the whole way. But I do think that Sligo, they're an up-and-coming team for sure. They put on some really good performances. That Leitrim game in particular, it was a brilliant game. So I do think it can be close. But I think if Cavan show up, play how we know they can play, I don't think it's going to be too close in the end. But yeah, I know I'm going to say the Cavan are going to win well.
Over to the stronger side of the draw, and Westmeath and Offaly going at it this weekend, and it's Westmeath across the board here. Will is obviously playing a bit of yourself and trying to...
I knew you'd accuse me of this.
I didn't say anything. No, but look,
16 hours ago, so I was like, I'm going to be accused of some kind of double bluff.
I'm with you. I'm totally with you on the points you're making in terms of, I've seen a good bit of Westmeath this year, and from the sideline, and they've been really impressive in patches and games. Honestly, I think I've seen patches of them against Longford, for example, down in Mullingar, where they played for 20 minutes of the second half of the first half, and if they were to play like that against any other team in Leinster, they would genuinely give them a good run for their money. But we talked about consistency earlier on. There's loads of quality around the team. Wallace, Luke Loughlin, and he hasn't started every game. Heslin, clearly. Sam McCartan has come on a lot. Ray Connellan on his day. When those players are firing and going well, and they've obviously a couple of players back this week, genuinely, when I've seen them up close, they've looked so impressive, but they just also have the tendency to just disappear out of games for long periods of time. They'd Longford beaten out the gap and suddenly just almost packed it in to the point that the game became somewhat competitive after that. So it's just on that basis. It's obviously the factors that you mentioned, Will, in terms of the couple of really unfortunate injuries picked up in the Offaly camp during the week and the virus. I think I'd absolutely go with you. It was a fairly 50-50 game up to that, but you'd have to lean towards Westmeath on the basis of that.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you. I mean, it's contrasting fortunes when it comes to the injuries. So Offaly have been incredibly unlucky with injury, particularly with the Wexford game away from home in the Leinster Championship. It seemed that some of them were just starting to clear up, and then it was confirmed that John Furlong's injury was worse than first feared, so he's going to be out for 6 months. And then 15 minutes later, in the middle of a drill, Niall Darby, very experienced and important player for the team, goes over on his knee, and unfortunately he's ruptured ligaments in his anterior cruciate in his knee. So it may well be the end of his inter-county career, although Jack Cooney, the Westmeath manager, who would have managed him for 4 years at club level with Road, is convinced that he'll be back for next season, that he won't want the disappointment of missing out on the opportunity of playing in a huge game in Croke Park to be left behind. He won't want his career to end with an injury as opposed to on the pitch on his own terms. Like, this is intriguing. We're talking about Damien Reck against Tony Kelly. Like, it's going to be probably Johnny Maloney, the Offaly captain, up against Westmeath's marquee forward in John Heslin. Westmeath have got some very important players back from injury in recent weeks, like James Dolan, I should say. They've also got Jerry Egan fit this year, Kieran Martin fit this year. Last year, kind of injuries that caught up with Westmeath a little bit in the championship. This time round, it seems that they're just clearing up at the right time. Kevin Maguire coming back from suspension is totally key, because he's going to be the guy who's going to be detailed on Niall McNamee at the far end. And the last time against Carlow, Westmeath really struggled when direct ball was put into the forward line. Carlow caused lots of problems for them, despite the fact that Westmeath won that game quite comfortably. So Offaly have got firepower in their inside forward line. They've got a very unique situation where Niall McNamee is going to play at full forward, and you've got two guys who were less than 1 year old when he made his championship debut playing either side in Jack Bryant and Keith O'Neill. So that speaks to the longevity of Niall McNamee, the current top scorer in the Tailteann Cup. So I think it would have given Offaly a lot more hope if Niall Darby had been fit and if this week hadn't been as disruptive as it was. But the last few times that Offaly and Westmeath have played, Adrian, as you well know, it's been incredibly close. None of them have been classics. I'm not expecting this one to be particularly open in Croke Park at the weekend. But for Offaly, first time since 2014, they've played a championship match in Croke Park. I think Westmeath's Croke Park experience, as much as Jack Cooney was playing it down when I was chatting to him in Croke Park yesterday, has to be a factor too. Like, it's only a few weeks ago they played Kildare there. Yeah. They've been regularly going to semi-finals, got to a couple of Leinster finals there. A lot of their panel have got experience of playing there. By comparison to Offaly, last time they went to Croke Park, they got hammered by Derry in a Division 3 final last year.
I'm sure we doffed the cap to John Maughan earlier on and the job that he's done there, and he's got a very smart backroom staff, some big names and some lesser names, and they're cooking along nicely, and I'm sure they've been looking at that game. And Westmeath were also susceptible to that quick ball into the full forward line against Kildare. Really
probably as well, Adrian, John Maughan's last year, so it's going to be intriguing to see.
Is it, Will? Yeah, is that?
I think so. I think that's the feeling at the moment. Now, look, if he wins the Tailteann Cup, he's got a very strong argument if he goes to Michael Duignan and says he wants another year.
Has he not got a strong case anyway?
I don't know. I mean, obviously, disappointment with the relegation from Division 2, the league this year. Tailteann Cup run has been decent, but the caveat would have to be that Offaly have had a very favourable draw to get Wexford, Wicklow and New York for this run to the semi-final. It's been Division 4 opposition across the board for a team who were operating at Division 2. Whether it's Declan Kelly, whether it's Tomás O'Shea that takes over the team next year, kind of remains to be seen, but it kind of feels like Tomás O'Shea is definitely being set up to be part of the management team for next season. But I think to Mon's great credit, he's used 9 of the under-20s from last year. It would have been very easy when you go into the final year of your term to say, I'm going to use the players I have available and the 20s can be eased in. He's actually developed quite a few players this season, even if not every Offaly supporter entirely agrees with the style of football that they play or whatever else. I think generally this has been a pretty positive year for Offaly, and hopefully, I'm going far more hope than expectation, they might get 2 days in Croke Park as opposed to 1.
What are you thinking, Aisling? Is it close, or what are you thinking?
I'm surprised by that John Maughan news. I think he's doing a great job in there, and it feels like he's building. So, and as Will said about the 20s coming up as well, I think it's really exciting times for Offaly football. And as you've all said already, like, it would have been so different if, you know, Offaly didn't have the massive blow, especially of Niall Darby. That's really sad news to hear that, because it's extremely tough at that age to get an injury like that, and to be knowing that you're going out to Croke Park to play in a semi-final, just really tough for him. But hopefully we'll see him back. But on the basis of that, then you look at Westmeath and you see, look, they even got the likes of Kevin Maguire back in there, so they were getting a boost that way. So I think that Westmeath will edge it, but it would have been a totally different game, I think, if Offaly didn't have the injuries and the virus as well. I think it would have been totally different.
Yeah, like the factors of Westmeath being more familiar with Croke Park is something we discussed earlier on. I think that their performance against Kildare wasn't perfect or anywhere close to it a few weeks ago, but it was a 215 they scored in that game. It was a very good offensive performance. When you talk about it not being a classic, Will, I think that if it does turn into a classic, I think Westmeath will win this game. If it's tighter, I'm not as confident in them, but I've still backed them. I think the Croke Park factor is actually probably more intriguing for the other game on Sunday, Sligo against Cavan. Did I read somewhere that one of the Sligo players has never even been to Croke Park, let alone playing in Croke Park? So there's definitely more of a novelty about that fixture and more of a novelty about Croke Park in that. And also we've got a Daffar cap to Tony McEntee, who as a non-Kerry man has done and performed the Yera of the year, I would say. He says that we played down in a challenge match and lost by 5 or 6 points, so there is still that gulf between ourselves and Cavan. Cavan are probably a Division 2 team and we're a strong Division 4 team, so that's exactly how you motivate your team to go in as underdogs on Sunday, and maybe Sligo will do something special.
Yeah, he used that exact line with me as well, Eoin, yesterday, so obviously
he's well practiced.
He had planned before he went in.
Yeah, a couple of crackers on the TV, and we'll.
How have you never been to Croke Park? That's crazy.
Mad, isn't it?
Sligo's a long way from Dublin, and not too many opportunities to go there during the year. So I think
another good start in the championship games. Just before we finish up, lads, Donald Murphy has obviously been long serving for Sligo. Again, I was chatting to Tony McEntee yesterday. He was saying he's going to play 5 championship games this summer. He's played 15 championship games in his entire career. So it just goes to show the benefit of the Tailteann Cup to provide more games for counties like Sligo, who generally have been going out in the first round of the qualifiers in recent years.
Yeah, it's win-win. Fair play. Will, Aisling, thanks a million.
Thanks, lads.
Cheers, lads.
That's Quick Picks.
I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
20 to 9 Friday morning, you're watching OTB AM. We're delighted to have you with us, and thanks a million for tuning in. We are brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. And do if you have any comments about what it is we're chatting about this morning or anything else in relation to the sport, please do keep them coming into us. And one comment here says that we, the South African teams, don't care about your beloved Leinster, in relation to one of the YouTube commenters, not my beloved Leinster, somebody else's beloved Leinster.
Geez.
Just to clarify that, Owen.
It's a sickening blow for you on a Friday morning, isn't it?
Sickening. Join us at the Silk and Thomas in Kildare Town on June 21st. It's next week. We're going to be looking ahead to the Dubai Duty Free Irish Derby Festival at the Curra Racecourse. We're going to be chatting to Irish Derby legends Michael Kinane, Johnny Murtagh and Shamie Heffernan for an in-depth Irish Derby discussion and analysis and what it takes from horse and jockey to win that iconic race. You'll have Johnny Ward and John Duggan for company as well. What more would you want? You can go to otbsports.com and see our social channels as well for how to get involved in all of that. And it's next week and it's in Kildare Town. It's Tuesday night and it'll be marking your card ahead of the Irish Derby. So sure, what more would you want? Right, it is 8:43. You're watching OTB AM. We still have SKG on the URC. Stephen Kisbey-Green in a couple of moments' time is going to mark a card for the rugby at the weekend. Not that interested in the URC final. Well, Stephen is going to change your mind on that, or at least that was certainly the plan when we pitched together this item. So that is to come. We're also going to have a live crappy quiz a little bit after that. It's going to be myself against Arthur against JD. And I can only really see it going one direction. I presume we've got a load of weird rounds again on that don't make a huge amount of sense even after they've been done.
If like writing it was just a fever dream. So get ready, buckle up, everybody.
Buckle up. SKG and the URC. Stephen Kisbey-Green, come on in.
How's it going, lads?
Good morning to you.
Beautiful Friday morning.
Our resident South African rugby nerd. Fair enough.
Yeah, I was looking forward to the weekend's rugby.
So Stormers against Bulls tomorrow evening, and I've already put it on record a little bit earlier on that it's not a game I'm planning to watch. It's definitely disappointing that Ulster and Leinster. What are you laughing about?
I don't know. It's just like so disrespectful. Like, I mean, I'm already in Stephen. If this is a debate between you and Stephen about the importance of this game, I'm already rooting against you for the way you've like dismissed this.
I'm just being honest. Like, okay. I'm just being honest. There's no showmanship about that. I genuinely have no plans to watch the game. It is disappointing, of course, that there wasn't an Ulster or a Leinster in the final where you'd have that bit of a vested interest.
I wish you said this earlier in the week, because like that could have been put to both of the head coaches in the press conferences, and they might have just been like, well, there's no point playing this if Adrian Barry of Cheeseboard fame is not watching us.
They could give two hoots as to what I or anybody else at this side of the water thinks. But
no Adrian Barry and his cheeseboard tuning in to watch a 6:30 kickoff.
It ain't happening. It'd be ideal time for a cheeseboard.
Deliberately pushed back so that Adrian Barry could watch it at the particular time.
It's clashing with the US Open as well. I'm adding that caveat as to why I'm not going to be watching. But you're going to convince us why. 3 reasons. SKG, let's go.
It's going to be probably one of the best games of the season. It's 2 completely different styles of South African rugby. There's this sort of ongoing narrative that all South African teams play the same rugby. It's up the guts. It's one-out runners. It's boring. It's this and the next thing. Stormers have kind of proven that wrong entirely all season. They've been exciting. They've been attack-minded, and they've got a lot of sort of wide-ranging skills in their side. The Bulls are a lot like what you'd expect from the South African side, so it's going to be what we hoped Leinster versus the Bulls was supposed to be last week. It's going to be that, but a bit better.
So reason number 1 is it's probably going to be the best game of the season. So I'm not with you. I'm not having that. It could go either way. It's going to be wet. It could be a desperate game.
What's the best URC game of the season so far then? And what's the barometer?
Leinster's thumping of Glasgow, was it in the
what a classic.
You cannot tell me that you enjoyed that pathetic
Of course I did.
Why? Because you're a Leinster supporter.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, that is the opposite of what good rugby is. When a team thrashes a team 70-0, or 70-14 or whatever it was, I can't remember what the cricket score. That, to me, is the opposite of good, exciting, watchable rugby.
So
it's going to be close. It's going to be in the trenches. It's going to be back and forth. No team is going to get away from one another. Yeah, it's going to be wet and miserable, but so is Connacht. So are you saying that every...
So is Connacht generally wet and miserable? Wow. Jeez, I thought I was the leading contender here for having a lash off Connacht, but SKG, you've just moved swiftly into number 1 there. Anyway, I'm not having that number 1 reason. I'm not having it. It might be the best game of the season. I'm not having. We'll judge that after the game. Number 2, what have we got?
Number 2, it's going to be a true representation of the chaos, the crack that South African fans will have. Basically, it's going to advertise the raucousness of South African stadiums. Cape Town is one of the best sort of party atmospheres in terms of a stadium, even though it's at 7:30 at night in the middle of winter. It's still going to be a good party atmosphere. It's sold out to the capacity that they are allowed to sell it out. It's still 50% capacity in South Africa stadiums. So that's a little bit disappointing that they didn't increase it to full capacity. But the match itself is sold out. It'll be a good advertisement to show Irish fans what you can expect going over to a South African to an away match in South Africa. I mean, I'm sure yourself as the anti-South African in the room are one of the few that have said that you would never travel to South Africa for a rugby match unless it's like a tour of like an international. But the costs are minimal. The most expensive thing is the flight. Everything else in South Africa, when you think of the Euros, is cheap. And this is going to be like this time next year, if a South African final is if South Africa are hosting Leinster, I fully expect a huge portion of prawn sandwich brigade people to be out and in full force in Pretoria or Durban or Cape Town.
And I'm fully sure that I'm actually sharing a studio with one of those people, Stephen.
No, I thought Adrian was with a cheese board, not a prawn sandwich.
No, he will take whatever is put in front of him.
I think that absolutely, SKG, you're sort of luring us in here with a bit of these sort of suckering us up with some of these little soft punches, and with the last blow you're going to knock us out, because I have to say a full stadium, Raucous Stadium, that is absolutely not going to turn me away from the US Open to turn this game on. So you're 0 from 2 for me so far. Knock us out with your last punch.
Probably won't entice you with this last one. It's the Connacht fans seem to hate you too. Jake White is probably the most hated man in Connacht at the moment, purely because of his imbecile comments at the beginning of the season, and it'll just be great to try and watch his team lose. I do think if anybody's going to beat the Bulls in a final, it will be the Stormers. Their style of rugby is the way to beat them. So, I mean, for those of you that don't really remember what Jake White said at the beginning of this, he was sort of saying that Connacht have a lot of Leinster guys that come down from Leinster because they didn't get a contract up there. They go down there. It's a small franchise. The players like Mac Hansen would go to try and make themselves noticed by the big franchises, the big provinces. So he basically kind of called Connacht the smallest province in Ireland. And it'll just be good to see him get his comeuppance. Also, a lot of South African fans don't like the Bulls. In fact, they're the only South African team that, unless you're a Bulls supporter, you just don't want them to win.
I think that last point is probably the thing that turns this for Adrian, because of course Adrian was working as an agent for Jake White not so long ago, trying to get Mac Hansen to move to a different province. In fact, I think it was he had heard Adrian privately saying that Mac Hansen should move to Munster. That was what prompted Jake White to make his disgusting comments at the start of the year. So I'm with you on that, Adrian. I'm sure you're interested. I should also say at this point that if Leinster are back in the URC final next season and like you glorified it, like, hold on a minute, actually. You were the guy who tweeted being like, this is possibly the greatest team of all time ever at a Pro 14 final. At a Pro 14 final, which is essentially the URC final, and now you won't even watch the URC final. So you can't have your cheese board needed too.
Ridiculous, sure. Like, you can't compare, like, the team that, if Munster are involved in the final at the weekend, are you watching the URC final this weekend?
I think after this item, I certainly will be watching.
Do you know what, I have to say, SKG, you do have me with the last one, because I owe debt to Connacht fans, so I'll be there supporting on that basis. But no, I mean, you don't watch a game just because it's the game. You watch the game because your team might be involved.
Are you watching the Super Rugby final tomorrow morning?
Am I watching what? No.
The Super Rugby final tomorrow morning.
I'll be out coaching. I won't have time for that.
I mean, fair. It's 8 o'clock kickoff. Irish fans should definitely watch that, because Ireland's heading off to New Zealand next week, in 2 weeks, or next week. And the majority of the All Black squad are busy playing against each other tomorrow. So it'll be a good test to see where that's coming from. But just as a rugby supporter, you should I mean, the more rugby is on your TV, the more you should want to watch it.
No, I'm with you, SKG. I'm with you. You just haven't bowled me over entirely for this one. It'll be the sort of game that, if it's close and it's tight, as you are promising that it will be, and that it's becoming a game of the season as it develops, I may flip from having it on the smaller screen to the bigger screen. I think that's probably the most I can promise at this stage. There's certainly going to be no cheese board out, and we'll just see how we get on.
Are cheese boards a thing in South Africa, Stephen?
Cheese and wine, yeah, best wine in the world.
Mm-hmm. Do you have an embargo on South African wine in your house, Adrian?
No, there's no embargo on any variety. Well, maybe a couple of countries. Any wine in my house, if it's in a bottle and it's red, in you come. SKG, you're off out to the cricket this morning.
I am, heading off to Clontarf to see the Proteas take on Ireland. Unfortunately, Ireland can't do anything to win the series. It's already 2-0 to South Africa. But it'll be good. The weather's not doing too well. There's going to be a bit of a rain delay, I think. But it's going to be a good day out.
Okay, good man. Well, listen, enjoy the rugby over the weekend. It looks like the bin lorry's outside, so make sure your bins are out. Good man. Well done, SKG, on the URC final, and we'll see if all those prophecies have come to fruition when we pour over it on Monday. Like, I mean, isn't that the truest? How long will you spend talking to Quinny about the game on Monday?
I don't know.
Very little, I would imagine.
I will make that decision on Monday morning.
Very little.
I don't know how much we'll spend. Just another weird Adrian Barry agenda to start your Friday morning.
What? That I just won't watch the game. I'm just being honest about it. There'll be loads of comments coming in now going, oh, you're this, that and the other. I've just been honest. I won't watch the game. I have no plans to watch it anyway.
Well, enjoy your time free of the URC.
Or I'll second screen it, maybe more to the point. Right, 8:53 Friday morning, OTB AM. We're going to be previewing, by the way, the 150th edition of the Irish Life National Irish Life Health National Track and Field Championships are going to take place at the Morton Stadium June 25th and 26th. This year's championship can see a host of Olympians and recent record-breaking athletes back in action as they battle it out at the World and European Championship qualification. Tickets are available now. You just go along to athleticsIreland.ie, and we're going to be previewing that 150th celebration of the championships with a very special Saturday panel. John Duggan is going to be hosting that tomorrow. It'll be on your radios from 1 o'clock tomorrow, so do stay tuned for that. Time to turn back to the rugby. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you?
How are you keeping?
I'm good, thanks. Down yourselves?
You're flying solo this week, so you're happier. You've got the airtime to yourself.
I know it'd be lovely to have him on again, Rog. Always good to have him on. He was a bit grumpy last week, wasn't he?
Well, we made him a bit grumpy. What, I don't know if you caught any of the conversation we were just having, but we're going to get into in a couple of moments' time, so stay tuned, everybody who's still got no interest in the URC final. Quinny is going to pick his team that he thinks should start the first test against New Zealand. But before that, will you watch the URC final this weekend?
Yeah, I will. It'll be interesting to see who wins that, and I'll definitely watch it. Yeah, I think Evan Roos, who plays number 8 for the Stormers, he's been absolutely fantastic. So there's a few players in there I definitely keep an interest on, and Elric Lowe, brilliant. Marcel Coetzee for the Bulls. It was interesting what Stephen was saying to you there. I know he was slagging you there, but interesting to say that the Bulls were, if you're not a Bulls fan in South Africa, you don't like them. I found that interesting. I didn't know that. But it should be a good final, I think. I was trying to think who'd win it. Obviously, the way the Stormers play, it's a bit more expansive and it's more attacking. But given the continuity and the cohesion that the Bulls have had in the last while, I think I'd fancy them to probably win it. But I'll definitely watch it.
All right. We've asked you to come on this morning and pick out your 15 that you think is going to start, or that you feel should start the first test against New Zealand at Eden Park on the 2nd of July. And so we'll get straight into it. Do you want to kick us off with I've made my 15 as well, so we can compare, contrast, debate, all of the above as we go through it here. Where do you want to start?
Oh, start us in the forwards, I suppose. Yeah, the front row probably picks itself, really, doesn't it? If you're particularly for that first test, Andrew Porter, Dan Sheahan, Tyke Furlong, that'll be the front row, which has been no surprise to anyone. I think there's a couple of, in the second row, although James Ryan hasn't hit the heights that he did obviously a few years ago when he came on the scene, he's a very important player for Ireland. I think he's 43 caps now, and Ian Henderson, who's come back from a couple of injuries. I picked the two of them. People will probably say, well, why aren't you picking Tyke Byrne? Basically because Tyke Byrne hasn't played in a number of months since the end of the Six Nations. So even though he's probably up to speed, doing a lot of conditioning and fitness training the last couple of weeks, he was very close to playing for Munster against Ulster in that quarter final. I'd start Henderson and James Ryan in the second row. And in the back row then...
Stall on a second there.
I better stop.
I'm with you on the front row, and I've gone for Byrne instead of Ryan in the second row. So we're saying it's Ryan +1. You're saying there's a little bit of match fitness possibly, and maybe he can work some of that out with the Maori game obviously in advance. What are the key... When Andy Farrell's coaching team are sitting down, Paul O'Connell is making the case for Henderson or Byrne, what are the points of difference?
I think form is one of them. It's probably an obvious one. The way Tyke Byrne has played for Ireland and for Munster, being on the Lions tour last summer, I think he's taken his game to a different level. He's very composed in everything he does. Obviously, his big strength is his athletic ability, ball carrying, reading of the game, his breakdown work. So, he's not a big second row, and we're crying out for one for a long time, but he's a very, very effective one. He's such a brilliant footballer. He can play in the back row as well. And I want to make this clear. If Tyke Byrne is playing matches, yes, I would be starting Tyke Byrne at the second row. The reason I would say is just maybe down to match fitness. So you're probably splitting hairs there. So there's every chance that he will start. And I think with the three of them fit and available, I think you have real good options. Obviously, to bring one off the bench, whether it's Henderson or Byrne. James Ryan hasn't been really in that position. He's more of a starter when he's been available in the last couple of years. But look, hopefully they're all enthused and fresh and ready to go when that first test comes about. But Byrne brings incredible dynamism and energy and his footballing ability around the field. I think Henderson obviously has a lot of qualities at the breakdown as well. And if there was any criticism at any stage that I've ever had against Ian Henderson, it's just that aggression and physicality and a bit of nastiness that you would want. He's a big physical player. And I think James Ryan obviously, he burst onto the scene that everybody knows about. I think he's a really intelligent footballer and just hasn't kind of hit the same heights, which is understandable for lots of players who burst onto the scene. It's hard to maintain that. But he's still a top quality player, and he's still very, very young and has loads of ability and obviously has captained Ireland a number of times, captained Leinster, and I think he's a top quality player as well. Give us your back row. Again, you're splitting hairs. You could put O'Mahony in there given the season he's had, but I think see, I'm kind of thinking what will Ireland pick and what will I pick?
We want your pick.
Yeah, look, I'd probably go with Doris, Conan and Van der Fleer, given that they're so used to playing with each other and they complement each other as well. The other option, again, there's nothing really in this for Peter O'Mahony to start at 6 and Caelan Doris to play at 8, and Josh Van der Fleer obviously starts at 7. So the team that I went for was Conan, Van der Fleer and Doris, again with the ability to have Peter O'Mahony coming off the bench is brilliant. But again, no issue whatsoever if Peter O'Mahony would start at 6, because I think he has had a really, really good season for Munster. He's been very consistent in his performances. But the Leinster trio probably, so used to playing each other, and that's probably the back row that I'd start with for the first test.
Yeah, I've gone with the same back row. A couple of comments coming into us here that I'll just put to you before we move on to your picks across the back. Danny Mack says that James Ryan living off 2018 form for a long time now. It's very harsh criticism, but does speak to the point that you're saying that we have expected James Ryan to kick on to another level, haven't we? And I suppose, look, at this summer would be a great opportunity to see that, but we just haven't seen consistent evidence of that just yet.
Probably not, and we've seen obviously the concussion he had in the Six Nations against England puts him out for a few months. I think he was out pre-Christmas as well. So we haven't, and it's hard. And I'm sure James Ryan is working incredibly hard to have the same sort of impacts in games. Again, he's not, we kind of don't want to label any of these guys because James Ryan is a brilliant footballer. I think the timing of the carries and the way he could run onto the ball and wriggle route very tight space to get over the gain line was incredibly impressive. But when you're disrupted and you can't get a run of games, it's hard to find that form. So James Ryan is a big game player that I have no issue putting out in big games, and I still believe that he can get back to that level. And hopefully, on this tour, if Ireland are to win a test, they'll obviously need 8, maybe 9s out of 10s from the vast majority of players, and James Ryan is capable of that. But look, what Danny Mack is saying there is, it's not totally untrue, because we haven't seen that consistent level of performance from James.
Yeah, and Andrew Garrity, to be fair, says that he feels sorry for James Ryan. The concussions have really impacted his form, which is in your point. And Thomas Gray saying that he feels that over the last 12 to 18 months of its picked on form, he feels it's Byrne and Henderson in the second row. So that's just a couple of comments.
Could be true as well, yeah. That could be the case as well.
Give us, get into the backs first.
Again, yeah, they're pretty obvious really, aren't they? Gibson Park starts at 9, Sexton at 10. And then again, I just think with the way Robbie Henshaw, he's a bit like Tadhg Byrne, isn't he? I know he's not a lot of rugby play this season because he had an injury pre-Christmas as well. I just think he's someone that you've got to put on your team sheet, given the impact and the quality that he has.
Can I ask you on that, Quinny? And sorry to interrupt, just for a second, because obviously he was. I don't know if we still fully got to the reason as to why he was left out some of the big games in the Six Nations. Do you think, is there still a question? Because I would feel very similar to you, and I think a lot of people would, that he's one of the first names on the team sheet. It looks as if the coaching ticket maybe aren't as convinced as that.
Yeah, I don't know, but he had injury. Was it a knee injury he had
prior? Yeah,
and again, probably some of the bangs and knocks and niggles that these players have now, they don't kind of reveal them anymore. So I just think the thing that kind of tips it in the balance for me, and Bundy Aki is a brilliant player as well, and I think he's someone who's such a strong character, Bundy Aki, that he'll be really important, and I'm sure he'll start one of the tests in New Zealand. They may play together. That experiment probably happened a few years ago on a couple of occasions where Henshaw and Bundy Aki play together. I think you have to have Gary Ringrose in there if you want to attack. His silky skills and his evasive running are really important to the attack as well. And but I think Robbie Henshaw, the thing that kind of tips it for me over Bundy at times is just his work rate and his decision making and his defensive work and his ability to just keep turning up, making those carries as well. So very little in it. I think James Hume would come into the equation for maybe one of the tests, and maybe he's closer to Gary Ringrose now than we've seen, having an outside centre who has that ability to step and take people on when you get the ball in their hands.
If you were looking for a surprise call, Quinny, like a selection that might surprise everybody, that could possibly be one.
It could happen, yeah, it could happen. But if you're expecting Gary Ringrose or James Hume to unlock a New Zealand defence by giving them the ball I think maybe I'm wrong because I didn't play in the backs, but I think for me, Gary Ringrose or James Hume or that type of player, try and get the ball in their hands as early as possible, as quickly as possible, and let them run on people, particularly early in the game. And I think they're wonderfully talented players, but New Zealand will have a few decent ones as well. Yeah. So very small margins in these games, but bar the end of the season with Ulster and Leinster and the disappointment of that, I think they can look back on a lot of positive elements of their attacking game in the Six Nations.
Yeah, I'd have gone for Henshaw and Aki there. Give us your back three then before we wrap it.
Hugo Keenan a full back, no debate there. James Lowe on the left wing, and again the right wing. Now you're kind of you could go with Keith Earls, Jordan Larmour. I'd probably pick Matt Hansen now because of his involvement in the Six Nations and the way he's played this year with Connacht. Again, they've struggled. Keith Earls is someone who has so much experience and been there and done that so many times. He was on this tour in 2012, but just probably the form of Hansen this year. In a side that was struggled a fair bit in the URC, let's be honest. I just think he's a brilliant footballer and the impact he made in the Six Nations. So there's a number of positions there. You could pick other people that might maybe down to perception or the way they train and the form they're in or their mentality in the next couple of weeks in training before that first test. So I think Jordan Larmour has come back so strong this year and it's great to see. And as I said, Keith Earls could play there and be brilliant as well. But I think, it's Keenan, McHanson and James Lowe for me. I've
put Earls in, Keenan, Earls and Lowe. Just one very briefly before we... No, I put him. I'm putting him in for experience and other reasons he's an absolute quality. Look at Quinny said it's a cigarette paper, I think, between himself and Hansen anyway, and I just put him in for that bit of experience. The old dog for the hard road on quality player. Just one question before we go. A quick answer if you don't mind, Quinny. Just the likes of James O'Brien, Jimmy O'Brien, James Hume that we've mentioned, even Carberry to a degree. Are any of those going to see starting test time?
I think they have a really good chance, yeah. I think Jimmy O'Brien could start in the wing. Carberry should start a test. And James Hume should probably start a test if they're serious. If he's a serious candidate to go to the World Cup and there's no point in him having him there unless we have a look at him now. it's a very difficult tour. It'd be better if you were going to somewhere else. It's a really tough task, but I think they should all start. Yes.
Okay, good man. Enjoy the games over the weekend. Catch up with you next week.
Cheers, lad. Thanks,
Alan. And one comment in here about the atmosphere at Emerald 90. There'll be a better atmosphere in South Africa than anything at Croke Park on Sunday, which I think is fair enough. Can argue with that at all. Right, it's 10 minutes past 9. You're watching OTB AM, and we're live with you obviously every morning brought to you by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio over the course of the day. OTB Gold from 1 o'clock, where Joe catches up at Ruby Walsh. Friday Night Racing live at 3. Team 33 legend today from 4 is Mark Kinsella, and then an Irish football special on OTB Gold with Given, Quinn and McAteer alongside Kilbane from 6. You can follow Off the Ball across our social channels. Don't forget to subscribe. If you're watching us on YouTube this morning, subscribe to the channel and download as well the OTB Sports app for the very latest and best in sports content and analysis. We're going to be back after the break. It's the return of the crappy quiz. First of all, Stephanie Roach chatting to Off the Ball last night about what it means to be back in the Ireland squad.
Stephanie, back in the squad after 3 years. What was it like when Vera confirmed the news to you?
It was all quite last minute, to be honest. We were training, home-based training on Tuesday night, and before the match, we knew there was going to be a place available. So it was a case of just doing your best in the game and then see what happened afterwards. And obviously, we trained then Wednesday morning, so it was a quick turnaround. But I was absolutely over the moon. Rang my dad straight away, and he was like, "I'll meet you tomorrow for a coffee." And I was like, "I won't be here tomorrow. I'm going straight away." And it was all, as I said, a bit of a whirlwind, but absolutely delighted to be called back in.
Yeah, and obviously in your own situation, it's not as if you've been out of the loop, because you've been working as a pundit on these games and you're as close to the action as possible. So when you're in that situation, did you ever think, I might not get back in? Or were you always... Vera did mention yesterday that, you know, this was down to your hard work that you got the call up again.
Yeah, well, definitely. Obviously, it's been 3 years, as you said. It doesn't actually feel that long, to be honest, because I've obviously been part of the home-based sessions and working hard to kind of get my form back with P-Mount and kind of focusing on other stuff. And that will probably get me this opportunity again, you know, that way, and about working hard and training with the boys. And kind of, I think in my own mind, I always felt I had something to offer. I feel like I'd be quite an honest person. If I felt I didn't, I would have probably walked away. But going to the home-based sessions and obviously seeing how well the girls were doing and working on the matches and being part of it in a different way, obviously, kind of gave me that bit of, I suppose, desire just to get back in and get involved again, because I was part of the squad for over 10 years or so. So kind of I knew what it felt like to be there, and obviously being out of the loop for quite a while was disappointing, but I always felt there was a chance. Vera always spoke to me, we always had chats, and as I said, we had the home-based sessions quite a lot, and I felt I'd done quite well in the home-based sessions quite a few times. So for me, I felt like I wasn't far off it, and it was just about kind of working hard and keeping myself ready for when the moment did come where I got the chance to come in.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast? If you had to pick a greatest British footballer of all time, or even since Bobby Charlton, would you go along the Gareth Bale lines, or have another pick?
I think Kenny Dalglish should be pretty upset by that. If you want to say, is he the greatest since Dalglish? There's an argument for it. He won, 3 European Cups with him. His link up with Rush was... I mean, Rush has got an argument there as well. I mean, Rush was a... I think we don't realise now how good Rush was.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
9:13, you're watching OTB AM. John Duggan is joining us in the studio. Morning to you, John.
Morning, Adrian and Eoin.
You're in for the crappy quiz, which we'll get to in a couple of moments' time, but we wanted to ask you about the golf to begin with, because particularly from an Irish point of view, obviously Rory and his 67 yesterday, one back from the lead, like watching even some of the highlights last night where, as he'd say himself, he held a few nice medium length putts, I suppose, an absolute beauty on the 7th green. Laura Davies made a very interesting comment during it on his putting, in that Brad Faxon has done a lot of work with him over the last few years, and she said he's back to where he was 8 years ago now, so it's unbelievably exciting for McIlroy fans.
It is, but remember, we probably sat in here on a Friday after the first round of the PGA saying that he was going to run away with the PGA, and it never happened. So it's 8 years. We just have to hold firm, and hopefully he will do it. But I watched the press conference, and he was quite spiky in the press conference, and he was smashing his club around the bunker yesterday. Yeah. And actually, I think there's a little bit of fire in the belly with Rory. Obviously, he's just taken control of the soul of golf in the last few days, in the last couple of weeks. He is the moral compass at the moment. He is the guy that is the breakout defender of the PGA Tour, the forces of good versus the forces of evil of LIV. I'm a little bit facetious there, but not too far off. So I just think this is all about hanging around the US Open. It's going to get harder. The course is going to dry out Brookline. People are saying 10 under par. It's not going to be 10 under par. I'd be amazed if it is by the end of Sunday night, unless the pin positions are very, very generous. We're talking probably about 5 under par winning this. And it's funny, Rory at the end of the PGA was on the same mark that he would have ended up in the playoff. And he just needed to play 3 solid rounds and keep double bogeys off his card. So it's about keeping double bogeys off the card, and it's about hanging around, but he's definitely got the game coming together to be a major contender this weekend.
Yeah, cracker weekend in store. Righto, time for the crappy quiz. Chris Waddle.
Oh, you're kidding me. September. Kyle Lafferty.
Are you joking me?
Is that right?
I know, it's not right.
Anybody else?
Leash, was it?
Like, that is one of the most stupid questions.
Darius Vassell? Seriously, you all need to just stay quiet. This is getting really annoying doing this quiz.
What is going on here?
Welcome along to the shoutiest segment on Irish radio. It's the scintillating, it's the stupefying, it's the splendido crappy quiz. Every Friday we pit 3 of team off the ball up against each other in our no-holds-barred quiz of sporting factoids at the end of the week. Allow me to welcome today's contestants. Our first contestant sent a video to Leo Cullen last Friday of him pouring half a bottle of Merlot down the sink and tossing a cheese board into a nearby skip. These are the consequences for Leinster's latest defeats, and the province better know they've let everyone down. Give it up for the Athlone Bone, Adrian, who's your daddy Barry.
It's probably good for my overall health, I will say. Too many of those cheese boards on and all the trimmings, as I had for the Hiding Cup final, not good for your health.
Yeah, well, new season, new me potentially for Adrian next year. Our next contestant is going straight from Croke Park to the tattoo parlour on Sunday to get the words of Sailing to Byzantium tattooed to his chest. Sligo Mania is about to hit fever pitch. The Tailteann Cup is coming home. Give it up for Arthur PhD.
Morning, lads.
Thanks for joining us. And our final contestant is going to transform into the bowler Peter Webber if Patrick Cantlay ever wins a major. Who do you think you are? I am. He will scream from his virtual insanity tower. Give it up for John Duggan, aka Don Juggan.
The introductions are the best bit, aren't they, of this thing?
Cantlay out of it?
I'm not going to just die yet. I'll probably die. I'll die. I'll hopefully win the crappy quiz, and then I'll just dye my sword somewhere else.
As ever, the format is a classic crappy quiz with a series of questions on a range of themes, and then it's on to the slip and slide of trivia, which is the rapid fire round. You can podcast the crappy quiz on otbsports.com or on the OTB Sports app. And if you're watching on YouTube, a thumbs up would be lovely. You can send any questions you have via postcard to Crappy Quiz Quizmaster, Off the Ball Towers, Marconi House, Diggs Lane, Dublin 2. Round 1 is the boring questions round, never multiple choice. Adrian, can you name the last team not called Bulls to beat Leinster in a knockout game in the URC/Pro 14/Pro 12?
The answer to that question is probably always the Ospreys, but hang about. A knockout game in the URC. It's hardly. I'll go with Connacht.
No. They lost the year after that.
Ospreys probably, was it?
Maybe it wasn't the year after that. Scarlets was the team that last beat them. Yeah, not the Ospreys or Connacht. Arthur, only 2 teams made it to 2 Tommy Murphy Cup finals during the competition's short existence. Can you name either county?
Clare?
No, unfortunately not.
Sligo not one of them, no?
No, Sligo got to 1.
Wicklow, one of them?
Wicklow's 1 and Antrim was the other. John, Shane Lowry finished in a tie for a second when Dustin Johnson won the US Open at Oakmont in 2016. Can you tell me either of the golfers Lowry tied with in second place that weekend?
Oh my God. Nicholas Fast?
No, not Nicholas Fast.
Jonas Blix, wasn't it? Yeah.
It's not Jonas Blix.
No?
Jim Furyk and Scott Piercy.
There you go.
Round 2. It's 0-0-0 as we move into round 2, which is the Wikipedia list round. This game is simple. I will list from Wikipedia in order from first to last the clubs a footballer has played for, and all you have to do is guess the footballer in question. The first person to do so will win the point. There is one major rule. To avoid the complete carnage of a guessing free-for-all, each contestant must state their own name before guessing a player. Of course, this is the crappy quiz, so your names are your crappy quiz nicknames. We have OPHD, we have Don Juggin, and we have Who's Your Daddy. I will accept Athlone Bone either. It's up to you, Adrian. Failure to list your name, your correct name, will eliminate the contestant from that particular round of the quiz, and you get one guess per club named. Are you ready? Okay, let's go. Question 2 for whoever shouts their name first. The first player started their senior professional career with Crystal Palace.
Athlone Bone.
Yeah.
Clinton Morrison.
No. He then went to Arsenal.
PhD.
Yeah.
Ian Wright.
Correct. PhD is off the mark. The next one. Our second player started their senior professional career with Telstar. He then moved to AZ Alkmaar.
Who's your daddy?
Yeah.
Patrick Kluivert.
Not Patrick Kluivert, no. He then moved to Nerlandia. He then moved to Campo Mairense, which I've just butchered. He then moved to Boa Vista before moving to Leeds United. He then moved...
Who's your daddy?
Yeah.
Eric Cantona.
No. He then moved to Atletico Madrid. He then moved to...
PhD.
Yeah.
Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank.
Correct.
Oh, wow.
He's good at this. And finally, our last player started a senior professional career with Blackburn Rovers. He then went on loan to Swindon Town.
Who's your daddy?
Yeah.
Chris Sutton.
No. He then went on loan to Sunderland before moving to Newcastle United.
Who's your daddy?
Yeah.
Craig Bellamy.
No. He then moved to Manchester City before moving to Aston Villa. He then went on loan...
Don Juggin, Brad Friedel? No.
No. He then went on loan to Middlesbrough and then finished his career at Stoke City.
No. Don't know.
Nothing.
What? Colin is saying in my ear, good question. That was it. That was the whole point. The answer is Shay Given.
Swindon Town.
Oh,
wow. Round 3, Arthur is 2-0 up. Round 3 is the Pass the Parcel of Doom round. And this round, all you got to do is give me the name that is on the list of names, and the Parcel of Doom passes on to the next contestant, who then also has to give me a name. We will keep moving through the list until one of you gives me an incorrect answer, at which point that person will be eliminated. When 2 players are gone, the last player gets the point. Adrian, you can kick us off on this one. Can you name a manager who managed Chelsea during the Roman Abramovich era?
Mourinho.
Correct. It goes to Arthur next.
Carlo Ancelotti.
Yeah.
Rafa Benitez.
Correct.
Claudio Ranieri.
Correct.
I'll assume this counts. Gus Hiddink.
Gus Hiddink does count, yeah, correct.
Roberto Di Matteo.
Di Matteo.
Conte.
Conte is correct.
Thomas Tuchel.
Thomas Tuchel, spot on.
Andre Villas-Boas.
Andre Villas-Boas, yep.
Frank Lampard.
Frank Lampard.
Avram Grant.
Avram Grant is correct.
Luis Felipe Scolari.
Luis Felipe Scolari.
How many more are left?
1.
Oh, you are fucking joking.
Wow. Shout out to Baza, by the way, who messaged me the suggestion on Twitter to do this one.
It's a caretaker, is it?
I'm not. There's no caretakers on this list. Oh, wow. Tense music. I was like, who's tapping the desk? It's like, what is happening? Are my eardrums bursting out of my head? What is Adrian thinking? Look at him staring to the middle distance.
What cheese is I'm gonna have now?
Come on.
Jesus Christ.
Give us an answer. Come on.
Oh, I'm going to be kicking myself, but I just don't know.
You just don't know. So you're out. The Passel of Doom passes on to Arthur.
That's tough. I'm not going to hold everyone up. I can't think of anyone.
John?
No, I don't know.
No, okay, so we're not going to give out any points there. Maurizio Sarri.
Of course.
Oh, wow.
Arthur, you kick us off with this one. Can you name a winner of the Hurler of the Year All-Star this century?
Cian Lynch.
Cian Lynch is correct. Won it twice. It goes to John next.
Tommy Walsh.
Tommy Walsh is also correct.
Henry.
Yeah. The other multiple.
TJ.
Yeah. Oh, yes, sorry, that is correct. Yeah, sorry. Sorry, Arthur.
That's all right.
John.
Tommy Dunn.
Tommy Dunn is correct.
Joe Canning.
Joe Canning.
Gerard Hegarty.
Gerard Hegarty is also correct.
Tony Kelly.
Tony Kelly is correct.
Conor Whelan.
Conor Whelan did not win Hurler of the Year. Adrian is out. It moves on to Arthur.
Austin Gleeson.
Austin Gleeson is correct.
DJ Carey.
DJ Carey is also correct.
Ah, Christ. Notable hurling man, Arthur O'D.
Michael Fennelly.
Michael Fennelly is correct.
JJ Delaney.
Yes, correct.
Owen Kelly.
No, you're out.
Sean O'Halpine.
Sean O'Halpine, John gets the point. The remaining ones were Seamus Callanan, Lara Corbett, Richie Hogan, Owen Larkin, Jerry O'Connor, and Dan the Man Shanahan. John, kick us off. Can you name a non-European team that will compete at this year's World Cup in Qatar?
Qatar.
Correct. It goes to Adrian next.
Canada.
Canada is correct.
USA.
Yeah.
Costa Rica.
That's correct.
Australia.
Correct.
Brazil.
Yeah.
Argentina.
Correct. Tension just ratchets up another notch.
Chile.
No, Chile did not make it to this year's World Cup. You're gone. You're done. Arthur.
Senegal.
Senegal.
Morocco.
Morocco are there.
Uruguay.
Uruguay are there.
Iran.
Iran are there.
Ghana.
Ghana are there.
Ecuador.
Ecuador are at the World Cup, yes.
Oh, there can't be many more from South America.
There are 6 countries.
Colombia.
Colombia is not correct. Colombia did not make this year's World Cup. John Duggan. Japan is correct. John Duggan is tied it up at the top of the leaderboard. The remaining countries were Cameroon, Mexico, Saudi Arabia, South Korea, and Tunisia. Round 4 is the Fun Free Magic number round. Contestants get 3 points for getting the number exactly right in this round. If no one manages that, the nearest contestant who doesn't go bust gets 2 points. The second closest gets 1 point. I'm going to state that we can only accept the answer that's written on your paper, and I'm going to have to ask for your pens once the music ends. So if you don't mind, give us the following number. The number of NBA titles Steph Curry has now won, plus the number of times Rory McIlroy has won the US Open, plus the number of total All-Irelands won by Galway in football, plus the number of total All-Irelands won by Galway in hurling. Your 30 seconds expire when Sinatra sings Bright Shiny Beads. So how many NBA rings does Steph Curry have? How many times has Rory McIlroy won the US Open? How many All-Irelands have Galway won in football? And then how many hurling All-Irelands have they won?
Bubbles, bangles, hear how they jing-jing-a-ling-a. Bubbles, bangles.
Everybody's got their answers down. We'll go to the man on Skype first. Arthur, what have you got?
21.
21. Adrian?
16.
16. John?
17.
17. John Duggan is closest. The answer is 19. And Adrian, you got 1 point for that. So, John, you're up to 4 points. Adrian, you're now on 1 point. Arthur, you're in second place on 2 points. So, let's go through these. Steph Curry has now won 4 NBA titles.
Yeah. Nailed on for
Rory
that.
McIlroy has won the US Open once. Galway have won the All-Ireland in football 9 times. And Galway have won the All-Ireland in hurling 5 times. So, where did you overshoot the runway, Arthur?
I wasn't that bad. I think I did. I got the Steph Curry right, McIlroy 2 instead of 1, and Galway footballers 10 instead of 9.
Okay. Trying to get 2 on the money. We are into the final. It is no theme in particular, ridiculously easy, rapid fire round. So the score you get in this round will be added to your score from the previous rounds. There's going to be 40 seconds for everyone to answer from the same set of questions. We'll start with John, then go to Arthur, then go to Adrian. If you get a question correct, I'll keep asking you questions until you get one wrong. Once you get a question wrong, I'll move on to the next person. And your incorrect answer also means the deduction of 1 point. So,
what is you get 1 point for a correct answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
And -1 for an incorrect one. Don Juggan, you ready to go?
Yes.
Your 40 seconds starts now. Who finished bottom of the Munster Hurling Championship this year?
Tipperary.
Correct. Who lost this year's UEFA Conference League final?
It was
too long.
No, too long.
Feyenoord. Arthur, who won last year's US Open in golf?
John Ram.
Correct. Stephanie Roche plays for what club?
Peamount.
Correct. Australia beat what country in a playoff this week to qualify for the World Cup?
Peru.
Correct. What club did Burnley sign Nathan Collins from?
Stoke.
Correct. Name Joe Canning's club.
Portumna.
Correct. Who was the French Open women's tennis champion?
Swiatek.
Go. Yes.
Well done, Arthur.
Arthur.
Well done.
Well done, Arthur. But
1,
I have to say they were all
2, 3,
tap-ins.
4, 5, 6.
They were.
Which brings you to 8.
Andy.
John stays put on 4. Undone by the Conference League final, unfortunately, John.
Well done, Arthur.
A handy All-Ireland, Arthur, but listen, a win's a win.
Came from behind Arthur with his PhD. 2 from 2. You still feeling it for Phil Egan?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm waiting for him. But, I don't know. He's not been forthcoming.
You think he's dodging Arthur?
Yeah, I mean, on the evidence of it.
Well,
this is a tough round, remember?
You've beaten a titan of the crappy quiz this morning, so...
Come on, don't be giving me too much.
Yeah.
Come on.
Athlone is a good nickname. I prefer that one to good.
The Athlone in third place. You got the bronze medal at least. John in second place. And our winner today was Arthur OD. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're back on Monday from 7:30. Nathan will be in alongside myself, where we'll have the Gillette Labs performance rankings. Anthony Moyles in studio. We'll have rugby analysis and, of course, some hurling analysis from tomorrow night's double header. Right now, we're leaving you with David Collins, father of Nathan Collins, the Republic of Ireland's man at the moment, from last night's Off the Ball. Enjoy and have a great weekend. We'll chat to you on Monday.
Nathan Collins was the only outfield player to play every minute of all 4 games, and of course he capped it all with that sensational strike against Ukraine on Tuesday night. And I'm delighted to be joined by the man who, well, really made Nathan Collins the player that he is today. His dad David is with us. How are you keeping, David?
I'm great. How are you, Nathan?
Very well. A footballer of note in your own right, which we'll get into. You spent a lot of time at Liverpool when you were younger, played for the Ireland under-21s and had a really good career. But I think we'll start with your son, if that's all right. Can you talk us through exactly what you were doing on Tuesday night when he picked up the ball about 10 yards inside the Ukrainian half?
Oh, listen, you surprised me with that question. I was out walking in the forest, so I don't deal with the matches great when I'm not at the matches.
Right.
I know it's a bit unusual, but I went out. There's a park out my back here, St. Catherine's Park, and I head out to Great Forest there, go for a walk and just get away. I much prefer to be at the matches, and unfortunately I couldn't go. So it's a bit unusual, I know. Just that's my way.
So if you're not at the games, you just can't bring yourself to sit and watch them on the TV. The nerves are too much.
I find it's frustrating. You don't see everything. You're just seeing little snippets and the commentary, and it's a tough watch, when you're at the game, you see the whole picture. You can see the whole ground being covered by players, and you can see everything. And you're allowed, you can get a bit involved in the game. You can give a shout or two, but it's very, very difficult. Obviously, at home, it doesn't do it for me.
So let's fast forward an hour then. Talk us through when you arrived back home and you first heard what had happened.
well, my phone was lighting up. I had my phone with me just in case of an emergency, but I didn't obviously check any messages. But generally, when I start getting that many messages in, as happened previously, I know something decent has happened, if that makes sense. So there was a bit of anticipation as I was coming home, and that something had happened. And his Nathan's mum was there, and she came in. I came in, she's screaming, "Oh, he scored!" And great excitement. And, you know, it was just everything. He parted and he ran through, and I said, "Okay, it's great." And then I had to go up and collect his sister, who was up at Gaelic training. She had a GAA training, and so she gets in the car and she tells me, like, her coach has told her what she's out training on the pitch, and one of them ran up and showed her the video of the goal. And so it was great excitement.
That's brilliant. That is brilliant. I'd imagine when your phone is hopping and you know that something good has happened, you can't quite have imagined just how good it was and how brilliant the quality of the goal was. Like, this is right up there with one of the great Irish goals.
Yeah, listen, I'm only presuming something good had happened, but it was just the amount of messages and things that were coming into my phone. It had to be something, like, you know. So the anticipation, it's the hope that kills you, you know. But I get home and it was all finished and then everything. So I then watched back the match and I look at it then in the clearer view, you know, and the emotion involved. And it just, I didn't look at it on social media. I don't generally look at much on social media. So I just watched the match there, you know, and it was amazing. I just couldn't expect it. Michelle explained it to me, his mum, but to see it just blew me away, like, you know.
And were you thinking, I remember showing him that move all right when he was about 6 out in the back garden?
Yeah, listen, there was he would have done it, to be fair to him, when he was younger with Cherry Orchard and things like that. He'd often make runs through, but that's a kids football. It's a different situation, you know, to do it away to a team like Ukraine, who I think are a serious team, by the way. And I know people said they haven't had matches, but they've been together as a group. So I don't think Stephen has got the credit he deserved in the performance against both matches against them. You know, so I think it was very impressive to do it at that level, you know.
It's been a long old season, and these international fixtures have added to it as well, and he's played a lot of football over the last few months. So I don't know if has he had time to come back home post Poland?
Well, listen, since Christmas has been absolutely incredible. Like, you know, obviously he's got into the Burnley team and he's done ever so well, but he's gone through a relegation a dogfight, which has been nip and tuck the whole way right to the last minutes of the last game. So mentally, for a young lad in that position to go through that was absolutely tough. You know, it was really, really difficult for him, and to come home and then get into the Irish group really was a godsend. That is, like, as we said, we were going back. I said, Nathan, you're going home to your friends and your pals, and you're meeting up with them, and you're going to represent Ireland. He was so devastated, obviously, about Burnley, you know, going down. It meant so much to him. It was just such a godsend to be in with the Irish group, and in with all the lads, Keith and Stephen and all the boys and all the players. He's grown up with so many of them as well. It couldn't have been any more perfect for the lad.
Geez, you must be just so incredibly proud of what he's done, even over the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, listen, it's obviously we're living through it a long time with Nathan. Like, it's going back a few years from when he was 17, when he broke into Stokes team, and it was my Molly's funeral, who's basically my aunt, but she like my mum, and it was her funeral, so I couldn't go over for that match either. So and then he makes his debut there at 17, and from there he's just done things that it's difficult to compute what he's done at times. Like, you know, I don't really try to look at it too hard, because if I do, I think I'd be terrified. I'm just so proud of him, and just it's more than that. It's how he handles himself and how he behaves. That's the biggest thing. Like, you know, hopefully he has a good cricket career. He's 10 years, 15 years ahead of him, but when that's all finished and all this excitement dies down and is not around him, he's still going to be our son. He's still going to be the brother in the family, and he's, you know, so it's very important that he's a good man and he's good grounding, you know.
Can you go back even further then to when he was a very young age and starting playing football? And, you know, the Collins family are very well known in football circles in Ireland. As I mentioned, you know, you played at a very high level. Your brother Eoin, people will, I'm sure, know from his time with Brian Kerr at St Patrick's Athletic, and been a brilliant player at a very young age as well, if I remember. And your other son's been involved in the League of Ireland. There's a long history there. So you know a good football when you see them, and you were involved with Cherry Orchard. So while it is your own son, what age did you look at Nathan and think, actually, you know, he's playing DDSL football, he's playing at a good level with Cherry Orchard, and actually, as much as there might be a little bit of bias towards your own son, actually this guy, he is a bit ahead of everybody else?
Yeah, it's a delicate balance. Sometimes you can be too hard on your own son when you're coaching them, which happens a lot of the time, and then sometimes you can be too soft. So it's a really delicate balance. You really have to distance yourself from the father-son relationship and treat him as a player, and that's the only way we can be successful. Regarding my family, it goes back to my dad and my uncles. Like going back in the 1950s, my dad won the FAI Cup, and then my two brothers, Michael, played League of Ireland, Pat Dundalk and Eoin, who was obviously in England for 20 years, and then it follows through to our family, like, our cousins have played, Keane, Mikey, Joe, Sam, and then obviously Nathan's siblings, Katie, who plays now, she's in the Kildare Miners and played with DLR Waves, and Josh had a great run with, he was a UCD and won the League of Ireland First Division and played the Premier League with them, so it's a huge family background of football. Nathan, very young, he was 4 years younger than Josh. So he would have been going along to all the training sessions, all the matches. So straight away at 8 years of age, 9 years of age, Josh was training away, and Nathan would come along. He wouldn't stay at home. He'd come down to the training sessions, and it just naturally he just went in and joined in the training sessions. And we had a very strong team. But it ended up in the 15, 16, 17s. We had 12 internationals in that squad. It was an incredibly strong team at Cherry Orchard. But Nathan trained with them all the way through, and he would join in all the drills. He would play in all the drills. And he was more than capable. It's a big jump forward. 1 year is a big jump. 4 years is a huge jump. To be training with people at that age, and the passing drills and the shooting drills and setups. If you're not on it with the level of players we had, they'd be very quick to tell you, because they were all very driven young men. And for Nathan to be able to hold himself in that environment was, looking back now, it was very, very special. It really said something about him.
Was he always a centre back?
No, he started off in midfield. He's such an engine. Like the boy, he just runs. He can run all day. He always could. He'd go. Sometimes he'd just run to school. He'd be gone. He ran everywhere. So he started midfield and he was running around. And obviously, he wouldn't have understood the position much as a young boy. So he was very energetic up and down the pitch. He was very tall. So everybody be saying to me, "Why is he not in the fence? Why a big lad has to be in the fence?" And I was saying, "Listen, that." Nobody sort of appreciated his technical ability. I knew, when the lads in training knew how good he was, but nobody on the outside would appreciate what his feet were like and what his touch was like. So he played for a long time in centre midfield, up to about 11s, 12s, I think it was. And then just by the dynamics of the team and the players that joined us and signed for us, he had to move back because we needed a bit of help in defence. He needed a central defender in there, and we had a couple of extra midfielders. And he went back there, and then he just oozed confidence and class. It was just very calm on the ball, and he got us playing. It changed the whole dynamic of our team to help us play. Our goalkeeper would try to play out from the back. It was amazing. I think that stood to him as well. Playing in midfield, receiving the ball in them areas, and then even when he went in defence, he played left side defence. That was probably a bit of a conscious decision, because going back to my dad's time, he was always telling me, "Work on my left foot, work on my left foot." I said, "Listen, you're going to play in the left there. That will do you the world of good to play there." And it stood to him. He's played left back for Stoke, right back for Stoke, centre midfield. Burnley played right back, centre of the tree, so you can play numerous positions.
Yeah, it's interesting that step back, because John Giles would always talk about here on a Thursday night that it's a straightforward thing for a midfielder, physically, if they're up to it, to step from midfield back to defence, because you can see more of the pitch. You don't have to have that turn. He often talks about Declan Rice. Actually, you can see his long-term future being as a centre back, because it'll be so much more comfortable for him. That actually for Nathan to learn that midfield position. And it's funny now how perceptions even still are, people look at him and see the big giant of a man, and you think of the old traditional Irish centre back, and then you watch him and the pace that he has, and also the range of passing and how comfortable he is with the ball at his feet. He is a proper modern centre back.
Yeah, he has that. He has the physical attributes, and to be fair, he'll use them. He's been in plenty of battles in the Championship and the First Division, or in the Championship and the Premier League for a young boy. But going back to his goal, we talked about it afterwards. He was saying to me, met him at the airport about 3 a.m, and he said, "Do you think I should have hit with my left foot?" And I said, we looked back at him, and I said, it was really back to a midfielder type of thing, because the way, if you look at it, was he sort of opens his body, and it's like a midfielder putting it around the corner. The sort of way as it comes to them, you put it around the corner and get the other side. So it's a very difficult technique to do when you're running straight, to open your body and go like that. So it was, but I think that's from his midfield time, to be able to, with the outside of the foot, just curl them like that.
There's maybe a danger of over-analysing his upbringing, because I'm sure at the time it's just a normal father-son relationship, and you say you're coaching the team, he comes along and your older son Josh is playing there. But in terms of his development when he starts at Cherry Orchard, are you pushing him? Is he pushing you? How did that work?
Oh, listen, from Nathan's point of view, it's been totally driven by him. He was absolutely on me non-stop. Every training session, like Josh's training sessions, he's first one ready in his gear, ready to go. He'd be out in the car. There was times he would walk ahead of me. And I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "Well, I'm going training." I said, "Yeah, but I'm driving you to training." And he's like, yeah, but we're going to be late, so I'll walk on. I'm like, I have 500 metres to the road, I'd pull in and he'd hop in the car, and I'm like, okay, we're going now, you know. But he was just, and then he, like, as I said, I'd be going from work, and we have other children, as so many parents know what it's like here when, in Ireland, when their kids are playing Gaelic or rugby, and the other kids playing football and the other one's going swimming. So I'd be coming from work, and Michelle would be taking Kiwi or Josh, I said, off to their sports, and he'd be on the bus. He'd be gone down on the bus down to Ballyfermot with me. I saw, I'll meet you at the West County. I'm like, okay, well, wait there. Don't go anywhere else. I'll be there.
What age was he?
You know, he was gone. Yeah, that was it. Like, you know, he'd hop on the bus down there and wait for me. Like, incredible now, you know. I wouldn't, looking back, I wouldn't have my little guy doing it now. Seb wouldn't be doing it now. But Nathan was just, no, I have to be there. I had to be there in time. It's not a matter of being there in time. I want to be there for the setup, you know, 15 minutes before, 20 minutes before, you know.
Right. So he had that unbelievable drive from a very young age.
But just as they got older, the more understanding he got in the game, like he would be walking, say, with Stephen Rice at TDSL, and then he'd be coming home in the car with me, and he'd be saying to me, well, about our club team and stuff. Are we playing the right style of football? Should we, for our development, for my development, am I playing this? And I was probably a bit pragmatic at the time. In the DDSL, it can be a bit of a war zone, you know. And he was saying, listen, no, and he sort of changed the dynamic. It was like the changing of the football philosophy. You could see it happening in England, and he bought into it so much, and he'd be talking to me tactically, why we've got to do this and do that. And during games, he'd be over to me, well, listen, we've got to change it, that they're overloading us here, they're setting traps there. He'd see things. Yeah, and I noticed he still does that in matches, like even after we scored, I think it was the Scotland match, he was straight over Keith Andrews, and the two of them had their arms around each other for 30 seconds talking tactics, like, you know. And I'm like, well, you know, what's going on? And he was saying about that. I asked him what happened. He said he was talking about their trap they were setting and how we can bypass it and things like that. Like,
wow.
Just amazing stuff, you know.
And just obsessed with the game, clearly.
Yeah, but no, listen, he can knock off. You know?
Right, so yeah, he adds that bit of balance.
Obsessed. Oh, absolutely. Listen, we have to knock off. It's too much. So, like, you know, you play golf, and, you know, he goes out with his pals, and, you know, he does all the bits and pieces, and we always have to knock off as a family. It's just, you can't live that life constantly. It's just not healthy. You have to get away from it. You have to have hobbies, and you have to have interests. So it's very, very important. He's like all the young lads now, all these boys at this age, they love going shopping, they love getting their runners, their trainers, you know, going to the movies, they love the restaurants. You know, it's a different environment to
yeah, you don't want to be following these young lads on Instagram.
Yeah.
They're having too good a time. I just think it's fascinating at that, you know, he's 10, 11 and he's so driven. And, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of people listening in, and myself included as a parent, you know, you want to instill that sort of drive and ambition and sort of leadership at a young age in your kids. What do you put it down to when you look back? Like, where did that come from?
I just think he had it in him. He was just so competitive. Like, we'd be doing drills with Josh out the back when Nathan was 4 and Josh was 8, and he'd be so competitive to try to beat him, and then drills, and, you know, you can say it's the second child syndrome or whatever it may be, but in everything in life he was so competitive. In the school sports day, you could see him fighting, and like, I seen him in matches, and as a young lad they're getting beaten 6-0 and 8-0, and he's crying on the pitch, and he's fighting, and he's just trying so hard, and he won't give up, and you're like, wow, like, well, you know, as a parent, there's a person who's been involved in football, I'm looking, like, it's 6 years of age, I don't care, it's 8 years of age, I don't care, they're losing the match, you know. I'm looking and I'm thinking, this guy has an attitude that you cannot coach, you just cannot, like, he just went beyond me. As he grew and got older, I couldn't fulfill what he needed, you know. Listen, Josh had a great pathway from his Cherry Orchard days, went to UCD, got a scholarship, got his degree, stayed on, got a master's, won his Collingwoods, won the League of Ireland. Absolutely fabulous, you know, and got great qualifications. And any parent would be so proud and delighted for their children to do that. But he was just not having it. He was just driving and he wanted more. And as I say, the likes of Stephen Rice then was giving him. Stephen started with VDSL, started doing a bit of video analysis and things like that. And the diet came in and it just, everything changed. Like, you know, we take care of him, how they eat and things like that. He just changed the whole dynamic, how he takes care of himself now. And just a different animal, you know.
So were you talking then at a really young age about him going to England?
No, we never talked about any of our kids doing that. That would never be part of the conversation. Listen, success for us as parents, and me and Michelle have said it, is we get our kids to play sport, whatever sport it may be, to laugh at a leaving cert. That is the number one. And we keep them to that. There was times, I remember Josh coming home from training and Nathan coming home from training on Tuesday nights, and you'd see the lads walking up the street and they'd have cans or bottles and they're heading off to the park or they're going. And I said, oh, there's your pals. And the start, he's heading out. Oh, no, we've a match Sunday. Like, it'll be a Tuesday night. I said, no, we've got a game Sunday. But no way. And you're like, that's the discipline. That's the real success. Now, anything on top of that, then it's just absolute glory. You know, the sort of way. Anything after that, like, well, I've been so fortunate with my kids. But if you have your kids playing sport and getting the league cert and keeping them to that level, you have to have a certain discipline in your life, and it'll make you a seriously good person going forward. Like, you know, if you can keep that going up to that level, you know.
Nobody better positioned as well to give him advice when he did go then over to Stoke. You'd been to Liverpool, 25 years ago, was it? Maybe a bit more, 35 years ago at this stage. Let's not get into the numbers. But you'd gone over probably 16, 17 at a time when Liverpool were, you know, the dominant force in English football, and you'd spent a lot of time in the academy there. How much of that experience that you gained and trying to make that breakthrough did you feel was relevant for Nathan when he was going over? So many young Irish players do, and so many struggle when they get over there. What were you able to pass on that just could maybe give them that little bit of an extra edge?
For me, myself and Eamon were like 14, so going away. I know we probably weren't supposed to at that age, but that was in them days, that's when you went, you know, you'd be junior stage, you were gone. I wasn't in any rush for my boys to go away to England at that age. As I said, we've done a great pathway with Josh, but Nathan was just so determined and so much wanted it. So then we had to find, once we knew and the level he was playing at and the things he was doing and the clubs that were interested in him, you know, you have somebody at that level, you can't hold them back, if that makes sense, you know. And it got to the situation where I know he would have held it against me later on in his life if I didn't give him the leeway to have a crack at it and go and try to play football, you know. And then listen, when he goes away, he looked at a few clubs. There were so many clubs in for him, but we eliminated that and we said let's pick 2, 3. You look at the major clubs. Obviously, my elder brother's involved in Man City and things like that, and you're like, wow, it's such a big jump to go to clubs like that. And you know, the football had changed so much from in my day where it was Irish and English and Scotch and Welsh lads to where it's worldwide now. Like, you know, the African boys, the South Americans, it's the English academies pre-Brexit were the best in the world by a country mile. So it was very difficult. So we said we better off looking at a smaller type of, not a smaller club, but a one that you probably have a better chance of making a breakthrough. There was a guy called Steve McGavin who was at Ipswich, who we know from years ago. He played with Eamon, and he was heavily involved with Ipswich at the time, and Mick McCarthy was the manager there. So we said, that's going to be an ideal one. We know Ipswich is a beautiful part of the world, it's not being quiet, it'd be a nice place, you know. So we went over there, and I know Mick. I played against Mick when he was manager at Millwall. I know him from Ireland and things like that. I've met him numerous occasions. He's great. I know his agent, Liam Gaskin, and Mick took him in there, and we were like, yeah, listen, this is, Nathan loved it, the people were good, everything was great, and they were championship, I think, at the time, and then Mick got the sack. So we were looking then to look at other clubs, and then the Stoke one came along, and Stoke were going really well in the Premiership, and we were a little bit worried they were going so well. I think they were 9th in the league at the time, and they'd really changed their style of football. But we went in there, and he had a look around, and there was Rich Walker and Kev Russell were there, and they showed us around, and I sort of went through a few doors that you're not supposed to go through, you know, to have a look and see what's going on really behind the scenes at the club. But you could see there was a real desire of that club to improve their academy. The owners were so determined to bring their academy up and to bring players through. It was incredible. Like, you know, you could see that. And Nathan went in, he sat down, and we went and had a cup of tea, and the cleaning lady came over and had a cup of tea with us, and we had a chat, and just really liked and really fit well. And then when Mick gone, Stoke seemed to be one that fit, and that's why he went there, you know. So that was
Yeah, it didn't take him too long to make the breakthrough. And then, like Stoke, like Ipswich, one of those clubs, like so many championship clubs, managers change all the time. And I guess one of the real positive signs quite early on for Nathan was that, you know, whatever manager came in kept picking him. That whatever the style of play they wanted to implement, that they saw something in him they liked.
Listen, most people in Ireland are just seeing Nathan now. Like, it's such a hard gig for these young Irish boys going over here to break into a team in England. So Nathan gets in, he breaks into the team. He goes training first of all, Mark Hughes, he's managing, then he's breaking into the squad, he's there regular, and then Mark gets a sack. Then he's Gary Rowd, he's in the Gary Rowd in the squad, starting to make his breakthrough. He gets the sack. And you're like, okay, here we go again. And then Nathan Jones comes in. And he goes, gets in there, does a pre-season, absolutely flies in pre-season, hit all the numbers. He was topped up at the high levels, all the running, the long distance, the sprints, everything. He nailed everything, you know. And Nathan Jones said, yeah, you're right in the squad, and gets in, makes his debut, going great. And then Nathan Jones gets the sack. So what happens next? Then a new manager comes in, you know, you pop down the order. You know, it's just natural, and you wouldn't blame, like Michael O'Neill, you couldn't blame him. Like, you know, he's come in with a new job, he's going to play the senior. Ryan Shawcross, Danny Bath, you know, Bruno Martin's Indy, incredible centre halves there. So you straight away, you go back to them, and so Nathan then has to win Michael over, and he goes again. So, and he's had to do that every single time. And even when he went to Burnley, we under no illusions of how difficult it was going to be. You have Ben Mee and James Tarkowski, and obviously Sean Dyche is there, who's an incredible manager, and you know, it was clear that they were 1 and 2, but we felt Nathan was going in there as number 3, and we felt he would get an opportunity. So you look and you think, okay, well, this is where we sort of back ourselves, and Nathan backs himself. He said, I just need one chance. I just need an opportunity, and I'll show them, and I'll get in there. I know, and that's what he does, like, you know. So when he went in, and he made it very difficult. I think, you know, a lot of the fans were complaining when he got in and he was left out, and in and left out, you know, and he got in, then he stayed in, and they just couldn't, you know, they sort of went. And similar with Ireland, like, you know, we've so many incredible centre halves. Stephen has so many options, you know, and you have to be patient and you have to be respectful. Nathan knows his place. He's a young boy making his way in the career. These guys have been around for a long time, and they've done the hard yards. You know, they deserve their place. So you have to wait, and then when you get it, you have to go and grab it, you know.
The Burnley move was interesting. You touched on it there with Sean Dyche. In one way, I think people were surprised because, again, with Nathan, as you know, he's got a lot of really good attributes that he would go to Burnley, who were, you know, from learning from a defensive point of view, are probably one of the best places to go. But in terms of playing expansive football, it's never really what they've been about. And Sean Dyche is the type of manager who doesn't make changes for the sake of making changes. Like James Tarkowski and Ben Mee, two of the most experienced defenders in the Premier League, no nonsense at all, will go on and get good clubs now, I'd imagine, that they've left. And he's not just going to get rid because someone has done well in training. So there was definitely an element of risk involved that if Mee and Tarkowski stay fit for the next year or 2 years, there may not be an awful lot of football, but I guess at the same time you're going to learn a hell of a lot.
Yeah, listen, what's the other options? You go to another club in the Premier League, like, you know, they've 4 or 5 who could be ahead of him starting out. We really felt he was third choice. I look back at our previous record and previous 2 years, and the two lads have missed matches with injuries and things like that, and you're like, okay, well, he will get opportunities. And we just listened. The kid has such belief in himself that he said, I just need a chance. Just give me a chance and I'll be able to show it. And regarding the style of football, he's played since 14, all this academy football, playing out from the back, pass, constantly done it. He's gone to the championship where they still play the Stoke, they try to play and do their stuff. Michael haven't played amazing football. And we felt for his development to go to a Sean Dyche, to go to a team that's going to have to defend for their lives, who's going to have to put their body on the line, that would bring him to another level. Maybe you bring him to an area where he hasn't been before and test him in a way that he hadn't been tested before. And that's what's happened. He's had to absolutely fight for his life, and he's become a so much more rounded defender because of that. We obviously know him inside out. You know, we know his ability, how he can play. But for him to be able to learn the defensive side and the ugly side of football and the dark arts of football, and you know, he's playing matches and he have a broken hand, and the lads are pulling the arm off him, and you know, and he's like, you know, you have to deal with this. And, you know, he has to get there and he has to learn that. There was no better place for him to learn that, you know.
This is the bit where I want him texting you tonight going, why'd you say that? Everyone's obviously wondering what will happen next, and it's I don't want to say complicated, but obviously me and Tarkowski have both left, which means that Nathan and Kevin Long, I think, are the only two centre halves remaining. There's a new manager, Vincent Kompany, who, one of the greatest defenders who's ever played in the Premier League, as somebody that you could really learn from, and maybe a full season of being the main man is an attractive proposition, and that was probably what everyone thought was the right thing to do a fortnight ago, but the world moves pretty quickly, and when you score a goal like that and you put in performances consecutively in the way that Nathan has, things change. Like, you see, it sounds like you've been very methodical in how you've gone about this so far, that you've made the right decisions at the right time. So I'd imagine there's going to be some interesting conversations over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, first of all, we haven't had the conversation starting off. He came back the day after they were relegated, and the first thing he said, listen, I don't want to talk about Burnley, about what's happening and what's going to happen next year. He said, I need 2 or 3 days off, and then I'm with the Irish team. He said, and that's all that matters. That's all I want to focus on. I can't think of anything else. It's just it's not right. It's not appropriate. I've got, we're fighting for our lives with Ireland. We have a big tournament to start, and that was the first thing. So obviously, Eamon, my brother's taking care of him, and the agents and stuff over in England and all that. Eamon's based over there, and he's based in dealing with people. So really, we haven't had a conversation between myself and Nathan and Eamon about that. He finished up, he came home, he's gone away on holiday today, he's gone away for a week. And again, he just said, listen, I'm gone away for a week. Don't say, I don't want to know anything. Just let me have a breather. I need a break, which is more than reasonable, And the way we've tried to look at it is, you have to trust people. And listen, Eamon's my brother. I can't get anyone I can trust anymore. So that's his job. That's what he's dealing with. He's going to. We haven't spoken to Burnley. Vincent Kompany is an incredible player, incredible human. His manager, he's done a fantastic job where he's been an Anderlecht. He knows Nathan has been playing with Ireland, so he's not going to phone him during camp. It wasn't too long ago he was playing, so Vincent knows what he's doing. So it's just a matter of Eamon will talk to the club. Eamon's over there and see what the club say they need or what they're looking at, and then we'll weigh up. If somebody comes in, we don't know if they do come in. If they don't, what a position! Worst case, there's no worst case. There's no
21 years of age, and these are the options in front of you. It's not bad, is it?
Incredible. Yeah, you're right.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs